Welcome, welcome everyone to the Best Damn Podcast. I am your host, John Keene. As always, I would like to thank you guys for joining me. Ask that you please add, follow, and check us out. Facebook, Instagram, Best Damn Podcast, Twitter, The Real Best Damn. Uh, and wherever you watch us from, make sure to hit the like, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, let me know what you think, and share this link. Share it, it helps me to get it out there. That way, new people can find me. And if you'd like to donate and support to this channel, you can do that by going to PayPal, Cash App, Facebook Messenger, or by joining us over on Patreon. All of the links will be in the description box down below. I just tried to start this live a second ago, and hopefully we're coming through clearly. You guys let me know if you can hear me and see me, if you're in the chat, or if you have my number, give me a text and let me know. But we weren't getting any sound. I don't know why. I don't know why the mic wasn't plugged in correctly or something like that. Hopefully, you're not getting a bunch of feedback. I've been getting some weird electrical interference when I've been trying to do the lives here. But tonight, thank you, bro. I appreciate that. Tonight we've got a really cool one. We're going to be doing a deep dive. We're going to be looking at Agenda 2030 for sustainable development, and AKA sustainable development. It means depopulation, right? So that will entail quite a few things, and some of the things that the World Economic Forum, United Nations, World Health Organization, CDC, all these different government entities won't tell you is that this agenda, uh, it's it goes back to eugenics first and foremost, but uh, it's going to be accomplished in a multitude of ways. It's going to be accomplished through technology. It's going to be accomplished what many believe and hypothesize through nuclear war, right? And it's almost like a bad sci-fi horror movie as you see this cultish section of reality that we call the global elites pushing us towards this really nefarious outcome of this dystopian future where most of the people they're not going to make it. They're not going to make it. They have deep underground military bases ready for them to go hide in the case of all of this, and when all this takes off. So we're going to look at a lot of documents tonight. We're going to be reading some articles. We're going to be looking at some videos based on depopulation. So it's going to be a pretty well-rounded one, and going to give you an idea of just what may or may not be in store for all of us. So I do appreciate all of you guys. If you haven't checked it out, we've done a few. I've done a few videos here recently. So check out the channel. I've been trying to post them on all the platforms. And maybe there's something there for you if you don't enjoy what we're doing tonight. So let me go ahead and screen share. Gotta get around this camera here. Sorry about that. 1 second, guys. And as always, I am excited and I appreciate all of you guys joining me. I appreciate everybody. Here we go. Here we go. And whenever I get into this kind of stuff, man, one of the things that continues to really, I'm never really truly surprised on the things that we see because I've been doing this for so fucking long. But what does surprise me when I'm looking at these type of topics and these subjects is how many people still to this day aren't aware of what's actually taking place, and that's kind of what's mind blowing. So first, we're going to start by looking at the origins of the anti-human depopulation agenda. And like I said, we're going to be looking at different documents from NASA, FEMA, the usual suspects when it comes to government entities and the strategic exercises and plans that they've had laid out for us for quite a while now. And like I said, we're going to have some really interesting video when it comes to technology, deep underground military bases, and just all different types of stuff. So, and we will kind of incorporate this into what's taking place now as well. I mean, because always you see this, it's just a recurring theme. When you look at the media, it doesn't matter if it's alternative media or the mainstream media. You see this kind of being pushed and propagated to this very day. And like one of the things that really does surprise me the most is that they're not hiding this anymore. And by they I mean, the powers that be, the hidden hand, the global elite, the governments of the world. They're no longer hiding this agenda from you. you know they may come out with a few disinformation and misinformation campaigns, and they'll tell you, oh well, this is just a conspiracy. So I mean, if you're one of those people that looks things up on Snopes and shit like that, and you buy into these third party fact checkers, which we know that these fact checkers, these are companies. They're not independent at all. They're funded by the people that are asking them to check the facts, and you don't get paid if you don't produce a biased result, right? So it's government, and a lot of them are actually owned and operated by CIA, FBI, right, and many other world governments. So but a lot of people do. Most people, which is sad. Most people do believe Snopes. They do believe the fact checkers, just at face value. They're like, oh, see, the fact checker said it's not true. The fact checker said this is a conspiracy. But if you really did your homework and looked into who's actually checking the facts and who's paying the paycheck of the people that are checking the facts, you would know that you can't trust that at all. And there's a reason that they feel it necessary to have people even doing that in the first place, right? This is supposed to be the land of the free, where free speech is, part of the First Amendment, and it's a protected right, a constitutional right. Well, it doesn't matter if Trump's come into office and said federally, that there's a censorship ban and all of that. It's still the ball game is still the same, right? They're always going to protect the agendas that they want to protect, to continue to perpetuate them and continue to take us in the direction that they want us taken into. So let me pull up the chat here in one moment. Oh, this is the old chat. So let me see if I can pull up the other chat here. Where I got my other chat. There it is. There we go. Let me see if I can pop out this chat here. Bam. All right. I will be checking the chat, just kind of like, randomly throughout the video. So if you guys have any information you want to add, or you guys got anything interesting you want to say, I do check. So just putting that out there. Now, where am I at here? I got a lot of tabs open tonight. So we've got a lot of things to talk about, a lot of things to share, because there's just so much information when it comes to depopulation. So here we go. And this is, let me go ahead and drop. I'm going to start. This one comes from the Daily Wire. So let me go ahead and drop this in the chat for you guys. I'm trying to be more proactive and like giving you guys the, sorry about that. Giving you guys the links to the stuff that I'm sharing. A lot of people want that. I don't put it all in the description like some YouTubers, because honestly, I have so much shit that, so much source material. I don't know what I'm going to use and what I'm not going to use, on most nights. So I drop the most important shit in the chat. So the origins. Okay. Hopefully we're good. All right. Looks like we're good. All right. The origins of the anti-human depopulation agenda. About a decade ago, a successful Hollywood producer named Aaron Russo sat for an interview that no one talks about anymore. Russo was Bette Midler's manager, and he worked on the film Trading Places. And this is a fucking fantastic interview. Hopefully, the video hasn't been taken down. We can still play it. Russo goes into some detail about a conversation he had with one of the members of the Rockefeller family. Specifically, Russo claims that the Rockefeller Foundation and the U.S. government spent a lot of money funding the feminist movement for reasons that aren't remotely related to equal rights or empowering women. Watching the footage, there are a lot of reasons to be skeptical, even though pretty much every conspiracy theory from the past decade has been proven correct. It's still hard to say whether Russo is a credible source of information now. I'm pretty sure something actually happened to this dude. I'm not sure, but Pop this out.
He would talk, and he started laughing. He said, "Aaron, what do you think women's liberation was about?" And I said, I'm pretty conventional thinking about it at that point. I said, I think it's about women having the right to work, getting equal pay with men, just like they won the right to vote, you know? And he started to laugh. He said, "You're an idiot." And I said, "Why am I an idiot?" He said, let me tell you what that was about. We, the Rockefellers, funded that. We funded women's lib, you know? And we're the ones who got all over the newspapers and television, the Rockefeller Foundation. He says, "And you want to know why?" He said, "There were two primary reasons. And they were, one reason was we couldn't tax half the population before women's lib. And the second reason was now we get the kids in school at an early age. We can indoctrinate the kids how to think. It breaks up their family. The kids start looking at the state as the family, as the school, as the officials, as their family, not as the parents teaching them." And so those are the two primary reasons for women's lib, which I thought up to that point was a noble thing. You know, when I saw their intentions behind it, where they were coming from when they created it, the thought of it, I saw the evil behind what I thought was a noble venture.
And you have to understand too that this actually derives from the 10-point plan of the New World Order as written by Alice Bailey. She's a famous theosophist. She's written many occult and esoteric books. I've actually covered, a lot of the shit she's written here on this channel, like the treatise on the seven rays and all that. Like, so she's very, very well known, and she's definitely a part of these global cults, these what we would call satanic, these black cube Saturn worshiping cults that we've talked about a lot in recent videos. And you may ask why women's lib or anything would have anything to do with this. The point isn't women's lib, right? See, the point is actually that everything that you see and perceive as some noble cause that's being propagated by these government entities. And keep in mind, thousands of movies in Hollywood are actually given the okay by the CIA, by the federal government. A lot of times when they do military movies, movies about presidents, and many, many other movies, they are given script alterations or given scripts, period, by the government for government or state run propaganda, right? And a lot of these producers and directors and people that are creating the films don't or won't get access to specific locations, to helicopters, to all different types of shit when they're creating films, unless they insert the pieces of propaganda that they want them to put in. So there is this, and it's called Operation Mockingbird through the television and media and movies. Even when you are watching the mainstream news, this is why there's been, the whole fake news thing. You guys remember, and this is, I've talked about at nauseum how Trump is controlled opposition. But you remember when he first was elected in 2016, it was the whole fake news thing, right? Where he was telling you, because everybody had figured out at this point, there was this mass awakening that's taking place because we are shifting into the age of Aquarius. And every time we end a cycle here in humanity through the procession of the equinox, there's this mass conscious awakening, right? And it coincides with solar activity, as I've said before, right? So we see an increase in solar activity as we're in a solar maximum right now. It's a weird solar maximum considering there's not very many sunspots, but that's neither here nor there, I digress. But solar activity has a direct effect on the length of our lives, brain activity, and consciousness in itself. So our intelligence and everything, our awareness is affected by the sun. And these different solar cycles coincide with, cataclysmic and catastrophic events and the end of these ages or the end of these yugas in Eastern mysticism. And as they take place, we raise in consciousness, we raise in awareness, and that would explain a whole lot when it comes to why they are trying to do things like the geoengineering and solar shield and all of that, using nanoparticulates and different forms of aerosols and aluminum, barium, strontium, uh, heavy metals, essentially to block out the sun, because sun has a direct effect on our brains and consciousness, as well as solar radiation. This natural process mutates our DNA, right? Which allows us to kind of evolve into the next age or epoch of humanity. That's why you see, Neanderthal, Chrono-Magnus, all these different species of man and different species of, uh, entities on the planet throughout different periods, right? At all the different geological records, the different soil records show everything was different and changed and altered, and it was by the sun. And this is a natural process. Well, if they know there's a mass awakening and a mass shift taking place, if they block out the sun, they stop our genetics from evolving and receiving all of that cosmic information, because the sun essentially is this giant beacon of awareness and information, right? Because we are antennas. They disseminate jabs that have the ability to destroy that spiritual antenna with graphene oxide and, things of that nature. And remember, the magnetic pole of your body is your pineal gland, and that graphene goes straight to its magnetic properties, sends it straight to that magnetic pole. Um, so if they're, through the water, fluoride, all of this, right, calcifies the pineal, like, brain damage, all of this, guys, putting metal fillings in your teeth, heavy metals in the food, heavy metals in the water, heavy metals in the jabs. You get the picture, right? Um, It's just to keep us from awakening, to keep us from being able to see through the veil of lies and bullshit, you know, that are televisions. And remember, it's called television programming. We are being programmed with through television, radio, the internet, and social media. You got to understand all of these are forms of frequency, right? And frequency has the ability to manipulate the human body, and all of our senses are, what they're actually doing is receiving and perceiving, decoding, deciphering frequency through our brains, right? And that's how we're interpreting the world around us. That's why perception is reality, right? So if they can alter what you're receiving, alter how you're receiving it, and alter how you perceive it, then they alter your reality, and they can make you believe essentially anything they want, right? And whatever you believe becomes your reality, right? So these agendas are always dressed up as in the name of safety and security, as these virtuous, noble causes. But 9 times out of 10, it's problem, reaction, solution. They create the problem to start with, right? Anticipate the reaction from the public because they already have the solution ready and waiting, uh, you know, to get us to a certain point, right? And we've seen this play out time and time again, and they practice this through, exercises, strategic exercises, crisis exercises, and we see it played out on the world stage through, false flag events. And like I said, it's predictive programming and symbolism and all of that to get us to connect to the energies, connect us to the frequency of the things that they are trying to accomplish, the goals that they are trying to accomplish. You got to remember that the hidden hand, those that are in that cult, right? Um, they believe that the masses are profane, right? You are profane. You're subhuman, right? And that you need to be guided because your natural you're naturally inclined to self-destruction. You're naturally inclined to abominable things, right? And without their guidance, that humanity will self-destruct, right? So their ideology is that they are nudging us along to this utopian reality, right? Where it's liberty and enlightenment, which is, there, and which they all believe that this information, this enlightenment comes from Lucifer, right? The light bearer, right? And that we are being indoctrinated into this slowly, into this one world system, this universalist system, right? So, I mean, I know that's a long way of kind of explaining it, but I just want to kind of give you like an outline of what the thinking is behind this. And you may not believe it, you may not think it's real, but they do. And that's the important part about this.
Aaron, did you know that Gloria Steinem, in one of her own books, now admits the CIA funded Miss Magazine?
No, I had no idea about that. No, I never heard that.
Yeah, we're going to
CIA funded this magazine?
funded Miss Magazine with the stated goal of taxing women and breaking up the family.
No kidding. I never heard that. Well, Nick told me. I mean, I know it, but not because I know the CIA was involved in it.
Well, Gloria Steinem was proud of it. Oh, the CIA wanted to help me help women.
No kidding.
So they funded it. Yeah, and of course it's divide and conquer.
Right,
And
of course.
what they do is they focus in, obviously, on real problems. Women were getting shafted in many ways, but the elite wasn't planning to help them. They were planning to really shaft them and take men away from them. Look at what they did with black families. You only had about 10% illegitimacy 50 years ago in black communities, and now it's over 90%. And look at welfare. You were going to give you some money, but you can't have a man in the house.
Right.
And so that was further to degrade the family, totally destroyed. And now illegitimacy is over 50% in the general population.
Right. Well, see, the whole thing is these people control the money, so they make all the rules.
They control the money, so they make all the rules. Watching that footage, there's a lot of reasons to be skeptical, even though pretty much every conspiracy theory from the past decade has been proven correct. It's still hard to say whether Russo is a credible source of information. But if Aaron Russo is a fraud, he has one thing that most frauds don't have, which is corroboration. This corroboration comes in the form of a document that was drafted not by some online troll or a dastardly MAGA Republican or anything like that. Instead, this document was written by a vice president at one of the most powerful left-wing activist groups in the country, Planned Parenthood. Every year for decades, Planned Parenthood has received hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer funding. In terms of political impact, they are maybe the single most influential nonprofit in the United States, and I use the term nonprofit very loosely, just like Planned Parenthood does. About 5 decades ago in 1969, Planned Parenthood produced a step-by-step roadmap for depopulating the United States. The document is called the Jaffe Memo, after the man who drafted it, Frederick Jaffe, who is also the founder of the pro-abortion Guttmacher Institute, who wrote the document in response to a letter from Bernard Berelson, who was the head of the Population Council. Berelson wanted a summary of expert opinions on how to make sure we have fewer people in this country. Jaffe's memo makes clear that the feminist movement is a core component of a much broader depopulation agenda, and that the agenda has been achieved for the most part. Point by point, it has become reality, just like they drew it up. If you want evidence that pretty much every problem facing Americans today wasn't just predictable, but planned, then this memo is a very interesting read, to say the least. And if you want to know where the depopulation agenda is heading in the future, then it's vitally important that you understand every word of the document. That's why I'm going to go through it. It's a memo I've alluded to at various points over the years, and we've never spent much time analyzing it in detail, but today we will. That's because it may be the most single important document that most people have never heard of. The memo begins with the statement, continued U.S. population growth will inevitably cause a deterioration in the quality of life of this and future generations. The document adds that many experts believe that, quote, explicit U.S. policy to encourage or compel smaller family size in the U.S. is necessary. What policy proposals might achieve this goal of depopulating the planet? A compilation of ideas for reducing the U.S. fertility rate shared in the Jaffe memo are reproduced in the article, U.S. Population Growth and Family Planning. Here's the first column of the chart included at the end of the Jaffe memo. Restructure the family. Postpone, or avoid marriage. After image of ideal family size, compulsory education of children, encourage increased homosexuality, educate for family limitation, fertility control agents in the water supply, encourage women to work. Let's go through those one by one. Restructure family, postpone or avoid marriage. They accomplished that one, obviously, in the 1960s. The median age of first marriage for men was 23. For women, it was 20. Now, the median age for men at their first wedding is over 30. For women, it's 29. This has been a slow and steady climb, and it's still increasing. For women, fertility starts to decline rapidly at the age of 30. And that is right at the moment that many women are now getting married. Of course, there have always been women who marry later in life, and there's nothing wrong with that on an individual level. But as a general societal strategy, it's a recipe for decline and eventually disaster. And this is a recipe that was, as it turns out, quite intentionally concocted. Now let's take the next part of that memo. Alter image of ideal family size. That happened very quickly. The Jaffe memo was written in 1969. Just a couple of years later, Pew reports people suddenly wanted much smaller families. In 1971, there was a shift in attitudes as Americans' ideal family switched from 4 kids to 2 kids. So just as a contraception is being legalized, suddenly everyone wants fewer kids. Another goal of the anti-human forces was achieved. The Jaffe memo continues by calling on policymakers to encourage increased homosexuality. In black and white, Planned Parenthood is saying two things at once. First, that homosexuality can be encouraged. It's not a naturally occurring phenomenon, at least not in their opinion. And then Planned Parenthood is admitting that the goal of encouraging increased homosexuality isn't about equal rights, it's about curbing the human population. In various corners of left wing media, you'll find a tacit admissions that this is the reason they're so adamant about promoting homosexuality. The Huffington Post, for example, published an article in 2017 entitled Homosexuality as Population Control: Why Gays and Lesbians Are Essential to the Balance of Nature. The article stated that, quote, even without a causal link established between homosexuality and population management, the obvious reduction in population growth attributable to homosexuality by itself indubitably works to preserve the species. If you ever wondered why it's always the case that the climate nut jobs are in complete agreement with the LGBTQ club, if you've been curious what exactly environmental Marxism has in common with gay marriage, there's your answer. The left views that the climate agenda and the gay agenda as two components of a larger plan, which is about one thing: depopulating the planet. The first column of this memo ends with these two actions: fertility control agents in the water supply, encourage women to work. And there's table 1, the examples of proposed measures to reduce U.S. fertility by universality or selectivity of impact. And you can see social constraints, restructure family, postpone or avoid marriage, alter image of ideal family size, compulsory education of children, encourage increased homosexuality, educate for family limitation, fertility control agents in the water supply, and encourage women to work. And I don't even know if I want to say anything on that. Economic deterrence and incentives, modify tax policies, substantial marriage tax, child tax, tax married more than single, remove parents' tax exemption, additional taxes on parents with more than 1 or 2 children in school, reduce climate and paid maternity leave or benefits, reduce or eliminate children or family allowances, bonuses for delayed marriage and greater child spacing, pensions for women of 45 with less than no children. I don't know what that is. In children. Eliminate welfare payments after first 2 children. Chronic depression. Require women to work and provide few child care facilities. Limit and eliminate public finance medical care, scholarships, housing, loans, and subsidies to families with more than blank children. And I wonder what the N stands for. Compulsory abortion out of wedlock pregnancies, and this is social controls, compulsory sterilization of all who have 2 children, except for a few who would be allowed 3, confine childbearing to only a limited number of adults, stock certificate type permits for children, housing policies, discouragement of private home ownership, stop awarding public housing based on family size, and the measures predicted on existing motivation to prevent unwanted pregnancy, payments to encourage sterilization, payments to encourage contraception, payments to encourage abortion, abortion and sterilization on demand, allow certain contraceptives to be distributed non-medically, improve contraceptive technology, make contraception truly available and accessible to all, and improve maternal health care with family planning as a core element. And this was all from the activities relevant to the study of population policy for the U.S. memorandum to Bernard Barrelson, March 11th, 1969. So it goes without saying that they've encouraged women to work. There are more women in the workforce than ever. There are also more women taking SSRIs and divorcing their husbands. So mission accomplished. But the other bullet points need some more explanation. Fertility control agents in the water supply? What could that possibly mean? Outside of chemicals spilled from train derailments, have we seen that anywhere? Well, actually, yes. Again, pretty much no one talks about it, but it's true. An article from the Daily Mail, October 2020, birth control hormone is making its way into streams and hindering fish's ability to reproduce. The article notes that up to 90% of birth control is unmetabolized and flushed down the toilet. The piece continues. A 2015 study from Washington State University found a link between synthetic estrogen and the growing decline in sperm counts, which have plummeted up to 38% in a decade. This synthetic estrogen can have effects on humans, even in very limited concentrations. Frederick von Sau, a biology professor at the University of Missouri, told the National Catholic Register that the fake estrogen can cause effects in human tissues at concentrations in blood below 1 part per trillion. So this is an extremely potent drug. Is that why sperm counts in men are plummeting? Is that why birth rates are dropping? No one's been able to offer an explanation for what's happening to sperm counts, but it's clearly a major problem.
If you look at the sperm concentrations, when we last looked at them, which was samples collected in 2011, the sperm concentration in Western countries was 47 million per milliliter, down from 99 million per milliliter 39 years earlier. So that's a decline of more than 1% per year. And it would predict between 2011 and now, which is 10 years, that we would be now below 40 million per milliliter. And that's an important number because below 40, it becomes increasingly difficult for couples to become pregnant. And how low it's going to go before we wake up and say we have to stop this, I don't know how long that's going to take, but it's urgent. However, then there's a whole other class of things which are not so easy to control. And those are the chemicals in our environment that come in the products that we bring into our home. Coatings is a big category, and you can coat a pan with Teflon or nonstick. You can coat a jacket with water repellent. You can coat a paper to keep oil from passing through it, say in a pizza box. So coatings are a real concern because they contain one class of chemicals, the PFOAs. Then another big class, and the one that I've studied a lot, is the chemicals that make plastic soft, and those are the phthalates. Phthalates as a class are called anti-androgens. Wherever they meet testosterone, they tend to decrease it, and most dramatically in the womb, in early pregnancy. One particular way that we see that is the size of the genital area, which is called the anogenital distance. Then when the boy grows up, he will have, we've shown, a lower sperm count. Besides having an impact on sperm count, it can increase the risk of genital defects, undescended testicles, for example, and later it actually can increase the risk of testicular cancer. We looked at pesticides, metabolites in their urine, and how they related to the sperm count, concentration, and shape of those sperm. We found that there was a big difference in sperm count and quality. The most dramatic was that men who were living in central Missouri, which is an agricultural area where there's a lot of corn and soy grown, a lot of pesticides used, they had only half as many moving sperm as men in Minneapolis. This is huge, half as many. And they were not workers, and they were just residents of the area.
Honestly, think about that too.
Low sperm count is related to all kinds of morbidities, including heart disease, diabetes, reproductive cancers, and ultimately length of life.
And I want you to, honestly consider the increase in erectile dysfunction and all of these different things that are plaguing males today, guys. Low testosterone, right? Like, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
It's always assumed that it's the woman's responsibility, fault, if a couple can't get pregnant or if a woman has miscarriage. And now we know that it's a shared responsibility. And getting the quality of the eggs is much more difficult than for a man to count his sperm or get the quality of his sperm. More and more people are now considering storing their sperm, freezing their eggs, long-term storage, because we're in a crisis. A very large and increasing number of children are conceived by assisted reproduction, and an increasing number of people are using surrogates for their pregnancies. We are already in the throes of a really, really serious situation. He could think about lowering his exposures by changing his shopping habits. He could maybe lose weight if he's overweight. He could stop smoking if that's a problem. He could stop binge drinking if he does that. So it's much, much harder to get the chemicals out of our bodies. The good news is that many of them are short-lived chemicals, that is non-persistent. They leave our body with a half-life of 4 hours, 6 hours, so very quickly. So if we could be aware of what's coming in and stop it, then pretty soon we can clean that up.
Yeah. So, you think about all of that, guys. This is, like I said, it's just a tip of the iceberg. It says, does this crisis have anything to do with the chemicals we're putting in the water supply and in pharmaceuticals? If so, it would be better. Yet another bullet point achieved by the Planned Parenthood in their agenda. Let's go through the rest of it. Universal impact, selective impact, depending on socioeconomic status, restructure the family, Let's go. Modify tax policies, substantial marriage tax, tax married more than single, reduce and eliminate paid maternity leave or benefits. For most couples, we don't have any kind of tax penalty for marriage in this country, at least not yet. That's one element of the Jaffe memo that remains unfulfilled, but maternity leave and benefits are definitely on the decline. CNBC reports that in 2022, organizations offering employees paid maternity leave dropped to 35% from 53% in 2020. Currently, there isn't a federal paid leave program, and only 11 states plus the District of Columbia offered the benefit. Then, if you go down the list, you'll find these two words: chronic depression. That's under the column heading of economic deterrence and incentives for depopulating the planet. They want to make sure as many people are as depressed as possible, and then they won't want to start a family. This is something you never hear anyone say out loud. We're supposed to pretend that everyone's trying to prevent chronic depression, that the SSRIs are making everything better, etc. But at least for Planned Parenthood and the rest of these eugenicists, depression has some upsides. To that end, they don't want anyone owning any property. Housing policies, discouragement of private home ownership. That's a version of the World Economic Forum's line about how you'll own nothing and be happy. And Planned Parenthood wrote about it all the way back in 1969. The final column reads, payments to encourage sterilization, payments to encourage contraception, payments to encourage abortion, abortion and sterilization on demand, allow certain contraceptives to be distributed non-medically, and improve contraception technology, make contraception truly available and accessible to all. Again, mission accomplished. With Planned Parenthood leading the charge, so-called gender-affirming care is now available on demand in much of the country. And this just changed, guys. Actually, there's an executive order that just changed this. Children can take hormones that will sterilize them for life. Major corporations are paying employees to fly out of state to murder their children. Of course, not everything in the Jaffe memo has come true. Compulsory abortion, for example, it isn't yet the law of the land. We're not forcing people to commit murder, at least not yet, but that may be coming sooner than you think. Consider the fact that euthanasia, known as MAID or medical assistance in dying, is now reportedly the 6th leading cause of death in Canada. MAID does not require a terminal diagnosis. In fact, Canada's government is killing some people simply because they're disabled or mentally ill or can't find housing. They're even planning to open MAID up to so-called mature minors nationwide. Disabled people in Canada are openly talking about how eager the government is to kill them. Watch. This is fucking crazy. When Canada's government What's Canada's government doing about this? Are they trying to reverse course and find a way to help these people live?
It's Watson's home makeover event. Beat the summer rush
Of
and
course, we
get
got a
early
commercial
bird
here.
savings of up to 50.
Hello, you've reached the Provincial Health Services Authority telephone line for medical assistance in dying.
The countdown to Joni Cowie's death has begun.
Your call is important to us.
If you call the number on the government website, they will provide doctors that will sign off for you.
Like many disabled Canadians, she is stuck in a cycle of poverty and despair.
It's no hope for anybody in Ontario. That's a good boy.
So she's planning to end her life with the government's help.
They could have me dead in 90 days. That's what I was told.
Like in my case, the problem is not really the disability. It is the poverty.
Les Landry is in the same position, wanting to live, but seeing no other option than death.
These two are for my asthma. This is for my COPD. Since when did we stop looking at the value of human life in this country?
It's a question people with disabilities and their advocates ask constantly.
We can organize medical assistance in dying in approximately 2 weeks in a very organized and efficient manner. Yet it is so difficult to get my patients the social support that they need to live well. That is morally distressing.
From her home in Windsor, Ontario, Joni deals with the grinding financial pain of living in poverty during an affordability crisis, compounded by the physical pain of disability.
I have severe asthma that's turned into COPD and Guillain-Barré syndrome, as well as cancer. I also just recently fractured my back. I'm tired a lot. The pain is excruciating. He told me.
Joni lives with her 3 dogs and her daughter, who is also disabled. They have no family support, so they have to find a way to survive on $1,228 a month Joni gets from Ontario's Disability Support Program, plus a few $100s more for her daughter. Even with subsidized housing, it's not nearly enough.
We have about $59 left to buy groceries in a month because our home, we have to have housing insurance, rent, hydro is high, gas is high. I get angry at people who say you need to budget better because I just want to say to them, go to hell. I really do. And I don't swear very often.
Here's the thing. Joni's financial struggle is not at all unique. During the pandemic, the government decided working Canadians needed at least $2,000 a month to live, while the disabled were forced to get by on much less.
They had CERB, but not for people with disabilities. People with disabilities have been put on the back burner, and nobody gives a damn about them.
Disability supports vary from province to province. On the low end, imagine surviving on $705 a month, as people with disabilities do in New Brunswick. Or how about living on $1,358 a month in Vancouver, where the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment is $2,500. The most recent numbers from Statistics Canada reveal 41% of Canadians living under the poverty line have a disability. That's more than 1.5 million people, about the population of Montreal.
Our social assistance rates place people with disabilities below the poverty line, approximately 25% below the poverty line. So honestly, this is legislated poverty for people with disabilities. This is the kind of care that's needed.
Dr. Nahid Dasani is a palliative care physician and professor of community and family medicine at the University of Toronto. He gave us a tour of the East Toronto neighborhood where he offers street-based care, often to people with disabilities living in poverty.
Many of the people we care for are dealing with serious illnesses, but often they're very sick because of their social circumstances. There are significant health outcomes if we don't address those issues and treat those issues.
The result, Dr. Dosani is increasingly discussing MAID, or medical assistance in dying, with his patients. Not necessarily because they want to die, but because they see no way out of the twin miseries of poverty and disability.
When people...
That is so fucking crazy. That is so fucking crazy. When a government, and this just shows you, like, honestly, all of this, and I think this is the side of depopulation that most people don't see, right? Like, when people think of depopulation, you know, they think of, world wars or jabs or, things like that. 5G, shit like that. That's what they think of, I think, for the most part. They don't think of like all the little moving parts in day-to-day life that are actually taking far more fucking people out than any of the big conspiracies and big, the big things that we're all afraid of, or, the population is afraid of happening. It's the day-to-day strategies that are actually smoking everybody. Poverty, assisted dying or unaliving, excuse me. The intentional, sterilization, contraception, abortion, like all of these type of things, right? It says that what's Canada's government doing about this? Are they trying to reverse course? Just the opposite. Just this week, Statistics Canada, which is the agency of Canada's government that catalogs how people are dying in Canada, announced on social media that it is effectively going to start hiding the statistics on MAID And here's what they wrote about their record-keeping practices going forward. Quote, the underlying cause of death is defined as a disease or injury that initiated the train of morbid events leading directly to death. As such, MAID deaths are coded to the underlying condition for which MAID was requested. So they're not going to say, we killed them. We're going to say whatever, whatever they initially led them to make that choice did it. And here's how the agency responded. Deaths are coded using the World Health Organization. Imagine that. Internal classification of diseases and related health problems. In the case of disability, deaths are coded to the underlying disability or mental health issue that was granted for. In other words, if someone is depressed and the Canadian government puts them down, Canada will record the death as due to depression, not euthanasia or suicide. And if it doesn't seem like something like this could ever happen here, you should know that already efforts are underway to bring MAID to the United States. In November, at a meeting of the American Medical Association, a resolution was proposed to remove this line from the association's guidelines. Quote, physicians must not perform euthanasia or perform assisted suicide. Instead of that line, members of the AMA proposed this revision. Resolved that our American Medical Association adopt a neutral stance on medical aid in dying and respect the autonomy and right of self-determination of patients and physicians in this matter. At this rate, it's only a matter of time before we adopt Canada's MAID program wholesale in this country. It's only a matter of time until we have a marriage tax, just like the ones Frederick Jaffe was writing about. With every passing year, we get closer and closer to realizing every single wish list item on the Jaffe memo. We have seen this agenda unfold in front of our eyes for decades. It is not natural. It is not inevitable. It was pre-planned, and even now, it's still in progress. When you realize that it puts the fake debates over climate change and gender-affirming care in context, whatever branding they come up with, the end goal is and always has been the same. Depopulation. That just happens to be where all of this activism leads. You can choose to believe that's a coincidence. You can come up with an alternative theory for why every single left-wing cause happens to match perfectly with the Jaffe memo, but whatever the case, there's one thing you can't deny, which is that all the way back in 1969, Planned Parenthood planned all of it. It's and I'm pretty sure I think I dropped that in the chat for you guys, but if I didn't, I'll put it in here one more time, just for you guys to check out. Share this around with people that you know, because this is a good one, guys. This really is. This is a good one. This is a really good one. And like I said, we've got pretty interesting. We've got a pretty interesting show tonight as we kind of like go through all this. I'm going to hit this from a bunch of different angles, so just kind of stay with me. We're going to look at like a lot of the different strategies that they have that are being rolled out, all over the world, different periods of time, by different methods. So this is just, the kind of first angle. So we got another article here, and it says, depopulation, an agenda. Pastor Akil Pano points the finger at the government. And Pastor Akil Pano has spoken about depopulation of the country, saying that the damage is in the generation ahead of us. That the pastor emphasizes that patriotism is being killed, and few couples living in foreign countries teach Albanian to their children. And here we go. There is no mass immigration, but depopulation. This should make someone or a caste responsible. At the end of the day, everyone's rhetoric in the public arena is barren. Every year, a city is being depopulated from our national body. The damage is in the generation ahead of us. There are over 1 million Albanians who have their hearts disconnected from the national heart. Patriotism is being killed here. The dream of being Albanian, there are many couples that will no longer teach Albanian to their children. You see this happening everywhere. There are quite a few couples in France and the USA who do not teach their Albanian to their children. This happens everywhere. So I'm trying to show you, right? Every country across the world is getting slammed with this, with the mass migration, right? Wars, proxy wars that are, and I know this one's kind of fucking being used to like, it's kind of like being used like targeting this version of like he's pushing this version of nationalism, and that's not really a good way to push it because most people don't give a fuck, unless it's their country. But what he's saying is true. It's like Albania, Syria, all of these different Iran, Tehran, all of these different countries, they're being targeted by proxy wars. They're being targeted by these, notice a lot of the countries that are targeted and hit the hardest are ones that are independent from the petrodollar. We have baby machines in Eastern Europe's answer to depopulation. Policies in Hungary and Poland are aimed at boosting birth rates, but will it help arrest population decline? So we have a little bit different take here. Nationalized IVF clinics, generous loans for couples who promise to procreate imminently, and lifetime income tax exemption for having 4 or more children. So you see how like the inverse effect for a country that's trying to actually produce a larger population. You see what I mean? Like instead of them being punished for having more children, they're now trying to get people to have 4 or more. And that used to be the goal, right? And then until after 1971, well, then everybody wanted 2, right? So the drive is to get Hungarian women to breed family-friendly Hungary, in the words of the giant banners that now greet arrivals at Budapest airport. Across Europe, as falling birth rates lead to projections of shrinking populations, policymakers pondering a question: can we pay people to have more children? Countries with right-wing populist governments have taken the lead in answering with a resounding yes. And think about Trump, his recent executive order. I don't know if I have it up here. I think I do, actually. Let's see if I do have it up here. I think I might, actually. Yeah, I do. Hold on. He just outlawed protecting children from chemical and surgical mutilation. And this is an executive order. This is January 28th, 2025. So I just want to show you that, that part of the agenda is now being wiped out here in the United States. And Trump's most definitely is a populist president. He's a nationalist populist president, right? And we are seeing in these other countries, like I said, that have this nationalist populist movement, that are now trying to generate larger populations. And there's been many things under the Trump regime. We know they made it harder for abortion in the United States. They took it away from the federal government and put it in the hands of all of the states. Planned Parenthood's wiped out as well as protecting children from chemical and surgical mutilation. So just kind of give you a little: by the authority vested in me and President, by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, is hereby ordered. Section 1, policy and purpose. Across the country today, medical professionals are maiming and sterilizing a growing number of impressionable children under the radical and false claim that adults can change a child's sex through a series of irreversible medical interventions. And he already started this by saying the national policy is that there are only 2 genders in the United States as well, right? This dangerous trend will be a stain on our nation's history, and it must end. Countless children soon regret that they have, and think about what happens to a lot of these people after the fact too. They have like fucking the highest depression and suicide rate of all people. There's a reason. They had their balls cut off. That probably make me pretty sad too. I'm just saying, countless children soon regret. It probably make my girlfriend also sad. So a lot, yours too, if it happened to you, right? So countless children soon regret that they have been mutilated and begin to grasp the horrifying tragedy that they will never be able to conceive children of their own or nurture their children through breastfeeding. Moreover, these vulnerable youth's medical bills may rise throughout their lifetimes, as they are often trapped with lifelong medical complications, a losing war, with their own bodies and, tragically, sterilization. Accordingly, it is the policy of the United States that it will not fund, sponsor, promote, assist, or support the so called transition of a child from one sex to another. And it will rigorously enforce all laws that prohibit or limit these destructive and life altering procedures, which I am firmly behind. I think it is fucking disgusting. Uh, Absolutely disgusting that they target children with this shit. And that honestly, what we're seeing here is a bunch of adults that want to do this, and they target children to legitimize what the fuck they've done. You know, like, oh well, I was like this since a kid, and we're gonna go, mutilate children to legitimize our beliefs, right? It's fucking disgusting and sick, and it's predatory. Section 2 definitions for the purpose, and I'm not saying that an adult can do whatever they want to do. Like, you know what I mean? If you feel you want to be something else, then by all means, choose what you want to be. And I even respect that. If if you want to be a female, I will treat you as a female respectfully. If you're an adult of a consenting age, it matters not to me what you choose to do. You know what I mean? It don't affect me any. Or vice versa. If you want to be a male, I'll call you whatever you want to be called, and all of that. I won't be disrespectful to anyone that makes their own consensual adult choice, you know? But when it's targeting children in schools by them coming into the schools and having story time with children, trying to normalize this with kids, we don't go into schools and like target preschoolers and play porn in front of them to normalize heterosexuality. You know what I mean? Like, so why are we doing this with other things? It's weird and it's wrong. You know. And then when you have adults that have these developing minors and they're, like I said, legitimizing their own belief systems because they have an agenda, and using children, mutilating children, it's wrong. It's so wrong. And their parents are fucked up for it. And the sad truth is a lot of parents get attention if their child is that way. People get attention for doing this, right? They're in those specialized groups. They go viral on social media and all of this, it's like, which is sad because, it's exploitative, and it's exploiting the people that truly do feel this way and don't do it for attention. They just do it. You know what I mean? It's wrong all the way around. So the term child or children means an individual or individuals under 19 years of age, which should be 21. If you can't buy cigarettes or beer, you shouldn't be able to do this. The term pediatric means relating to the medical care of a child. The phrase chemical and surgical mutilation means the use of puberty blockers, including GnRH agonists and other interventions to delay the onset or progression of normally timed puberty in an individual who does not identify as his or her sex. The use of sex hormones such as androgen blockers, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, to align an individual's physical appearance with an identity that differs from his or her sex, and surgical procedures that attempt to transform an individual's physical appearance to align with an identity that differs from his or her sex, or that attempt to alter or remove an individual's sexual organs to minimize or destroy their natural biological functions. This phrase sometimes is referred to as gender affirming care, and there's no care in it. Section 3, ending reliance on junk science. I love they called it that. The blatant harm done to children by chemical and surgical mutilation cloaks itself in medical necessity, spurred by guidance from the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, WPATH. It should be a psychopath is what it should be. Which lacks scientific integrity. In light of the scientific concerns with the WPATH guidance, agencies shall rescind or amend all policies that rely on WPATH guidance, including WPATH Standards of Care version 8. Within 90 days of the date of this order, the Secretary of Health and Human Services shall publish a review of the existing literature on best practices for promoting the health of children who assert gender dysphoria, rapid onset gender dysphoria, or other identity based confusion. The Secretary of Health, and as appropriate and consistent with applicable laws, shall use all available methods to increase the quality of data to guide practices for improving the health of minors with gender dysphoria, rapid onset gender dysphoria, or other identity based confusion who otherwise seek chemical or surgical mutilation. Defunding chemical and surgical mutilation. The head of each executive department or agency that provides research or education grants of medical institutions, including medical schools, hospitals, shall, consistent with applicable law, in coordination with the director of the Office of Management and Budget, immediately take appropriate steps to ensure that institutions receiving federal research or education grants end the chemical and surgical mutilation of children. And Section 5, additional directives to the Secretary of Health. Secretary of Health shall, consistent with applicable law, take all appropriate actions to end the chemical and surgical mutilation of children, including regulatory, sub-regulatory actions which may involve the following laws, programs, issues, or documents: Medicare, Medicaid, conditions of in participation of the coverage, clinical abuse, inappropriate use, relative to state programs, mandatory drug use, Section 1557 of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, quality safety oversight memoranda, essential health benefit requirements, the 11th revision of the International Classification of Diseases and other federally funded manuals, including Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition. And this just goes on and on. I'm not going to go through all of it. You guys get it. I'm actually going to drop this in the chat as well. And for those of you, and here's the fucking thing. And here's the thing too. Like this is where I'll say RFK, him, heading up, the health. These are some of the things that, I like I said, I don't think the guy's actually qualified. He's not a doctor, but I'm behind all of his policies, ending fluoride in the water and, the additives and all that into food. Our food is illegal in 40 fucking countries, all of this gender affirmation bullshit and all of this, like with children, surgical mutilation, and hormone blockers and all of these things need to be stopped. Like, anyways, these are the depopulation agenda right here. And it seems like, RFK Jr. is, and that's who I wanted to actually be the president, but, he actually bowed down to Trump and is one of his flunkies now, but which he didn't have a snowball's chance in hell anyways, it's like that Simpsons episode where they're talking about the third party candidate and they're like, go ahead and throw your vote away, voting for a third party candidate. But all of these things that are, taking place, and you can see why there are so many coming out and trying to stop RFK Jr., from being the head of the health, right? You can see why, because everything is undermining this globalist agenda and depopulation agenda. And it makes me wonder, though, because I don't believe that Trump is some benevolent good guy. I'm sorry, guys. I believe he's part of controlled opposition. I believe he's not on our team. I'm just saying, and we can tell that by a lot of the other things that he does. Like I said, like the Stargate project, Operation Warp Speed, right? His connection with Elon Musk and the neural lace and the mRNA. There's a lot of other very fucking nefarious things that are part of depopulation as well, right? So, I mean, yes, these things are being stopped, but, they're punching the gas on the biotech, right? So it's like technologically, the gas is being punched on other things, even though they're putting a stop to this shit. So it looks good, but we're like, and this whole golden age shit, we talked about that the other day. I suggest you watch the video from the other day. So we're gonna go ahead and move forward here. And directed energy weapons, we're gonna look at a lot of this, guys. So we got a lot of a lot of shit to look at today. A lot of shit. So And see, you can see too, and I'm just going to kind of skim over this. A lot of people are trying to fight back against depopulation. You can see here depopulation case studies and resources for local government. This is curated case studies and news from around the globe highlighting some of the innovative ways municipalities facing depopulation are fighting back, plus the best and most practical reports on the topic. Finland, Italy, Japan, Europe, Australia, and the US. Finland incentive schemes target young residents. Finland have been piloting various schemes to convince their young residents to stay local. As is the case in many industrialized nations, students often leave the countryside for larger cities, higher education. Yet in Finland, this often starts at the high school level. To tackle this, local authorities have been getting creative. They're offering to pay for driver's license courses of high school students. And Italy, how forgotten towns are seeking to reverse depopulation. See, these are just kind of like small things, but this is where it starts. Japan, newcomers sought in vanishing rural towns, which I have a document on attacking rural populations as well. Increasing or declining urban populations in the future of cities. And this is another thing with all the 15-minute and smart cities and shit like that. They're really trying to herd everybody out of the country and into the cities. This has been a long-term thing. And seeing depopulation and associated challenges for U.S. cities by 2100. It's a similar story in the United States. Research published in the journal Nature Cities predicts that by the year 2100, approximately half of the 30,000 cities in the U.S. will lose up to a quarter of their residents. This report examines the impact of depopulation on infrastructure and how underutilized and abandoned infrastructure can become a hazard and lead to disruptions to basic services like transit, clean water, electricity, and internet access. And yeah, so this is what I'm saying. They're saying it's, I think it's something like fucking 30 something countries population, by half in like 2100. Global population is set to peak in the mid 2080s and undergo dramatic climb. Not since the Black Death in the 1300s has the total number of people living on the earth declined. We've been around for roughly 300,000 years by then and numbered about 450 million before the plague swept the earth and 350 million afterwards. By 1803, we had reached 1 billion. By the 15th of November 2022, that number had swollen to 8 billion, and we should pass 9 billion in 2037. Only according to the UN's 2024 world population prospects, after hitting 10 billion in the mid 2080s, does the staggering growth of Homo sapiens peak and start to go into reverse. However, it's a complex picture. While we face a further 25% growth in our ranks globally, there are many countries where the decline has started. Most places in the world have below replacement fertility rates, less than 2 children per woman. But there are a handful of countries with continued high fertility rates. There is both the trend towards shrinking countries and some countries that have young age structures and are still growing over the next several decades. Falling fertility rates across much of Europe, large swaths of Asia, and most of the Americas are one factor. A counterweight is improving life expectancy. Globally, average life expectancy at birth has reached 73, and an increase of 8.4 years since 95, and will rise to 77 years by 2050. It's good news, says Patrick Gerlin, Chief of Population Estimates and Projection Section at the UN's Population Division. People in many countries are living longer, healthier lives. The list of larger nations is going to look different by 2100. For now, India and China represent nearly 18% of the world's population, but are on divergent courses. India overtook China as the world's most populous nation in 2023, and by 2100, will be comfortably the largest country with the population of 1.5 billion. China will be the second largest nation, but have declined from today's 1.42 billion to 638 million. That's a huge decline right there. Phenomenal growth will seek dramatic changes in the pack behind these two behemoths. Pakistan looks set to the world's third most populous nation, growing from 299 million today to 510 million, followed by Nigeria from 230 to 477 million, Ethiopia 130 to 366 million, and other African nations will see rapid growth. Across the planet, However, such stellar growth rates are becoming the exception for population. Growth is already losing momentum. The world's population is expected to peak, says Gerlin. It's just a question of to what level and how fast the peak and the decline will be. In 63 countries and areas containing 28%, the UN's 2024 population report found that in 2023, 4.7 million babies, or about 3.5% of all worldwide births, were born to mothers under the age of 18. Around 340,000 were born to girls under the age of 15, with all the attendant risks and serious consequences for the health and well being of both the young mothers and their children. Meanwhile, the State of the World Population Report found that 44% of partner women are unable to exercise bodily autonomy, which in plain English means they're unable to make their own decisions over their health care, contraception, and whether or not to have sex. 500,000 births every year are to young girls 10 to 14 years old. Nearly half of all pregnancies are unintended, and as few to 25 to 30% of women in low and middle income regions are having the number of children they planned at the speed that they planned, if they even planned on having them at all. Human reproduction should be a choice, but the latest data shows us that tragically it often is not, says a UN Population Fund spokesperson when faced with population changes or concerns. We often see rhetoric and policymakers turn to fertility rates as a preferred solution. However, do people proposing the solutions consider the fertility desires of women and girls? The UN 2024 report was unequivocal in its conclusions, noting that discrimination and legal barriers limit women and adolescents' access to sexual and reproductive health care services, raising the legal marriage age and integrating family planning into primary health care are, it says, essential to enhancing women's education, economic participation, and reducing childbearing. So you can see here that the UN, in their response to like these countries that, the main countries of the world, the most developed countries of the world have a decline in population, right? For the most part. And they're seeing a massive decline. And then a lot of these third world countries that are now developing, you're seeing an increase because, they're going from a third world country. And then you can see the UN in response to this, they're saying, yeah, well, here are the numbers, but what we're going to actually do now is push women's rights. Once again, which what we've seen at the very beginning of this video, sounds good in theory, but what they're doing is saying, well, we're offering more contraceptive and they don't have access to this or that, right? Because they really want the population to decrease, right? And I mean, we could, which we will look at some documents in just a moment to kind of show you where all of this is coming from. So let me kind of pull up over here.
We are seeing one of the strangest global events of our lifetimes. Power companies in the USA.
And see, and here is, okay, before we jump into this. So one of the things that we're seeing big time right now that is affecting population is technology, right? Technology, radiation, smart meters, smart dust. And see, these are the different documents we're going to go through. Taking action to tackle rural depopulation, National Action for Agenda 21, and this is the demographic dynamics and sustainability. So most of these are just like I picked out the parts that actually go World Population Plan of Action. So we've got quite a few that we're going to be looking at. This is also depopulation as well. So we will get into some of these. And let me close some of these, which I have a video I'm going to be doing soon. I was working on it earlier. So, on Tartaria. So that's something I'm working on right now. I just couldn't get it all done, or else that's what we was going to be doing tonight. I kind of put this one together Tartaria and the Hyperboreans and shit like that. So it's something I'm actually working on. So that'll be coming soon for those of you guys that are interested. I actually got the idea from a viewer. He sent me an email on that. I've never really covered it. So. All right, let me pull up some of these videos first.
This is a plan that was agreed to by 179 nations. It's called the Agenda for the 21st Century. It's a totalitarian state being developed right now all over the world. It is the inventory and control plan. Inventory and control of all land, all water, all minerals, all plants, all animals, all construction, all means of production, all food, all energy, all information, and all human beings in the world. And this is a plan that was agreed to by 179 nations back in 1992. It's a United Nations plan. It's called the Agenda for the 21st Century. And so many of us around the world think that sustainable development, it just sounds so great. Isn't it about recycling and creative reuse?
My headphones disconnected here.
And creating energy sources for everyone? And the answer is no, it really is not. It's about moving populations into city centers, concentrated city centers, and clearing them out of the rural areas. All systems have to be brought into harmony in order to control them all. Because when systems don't meet.
There we go. I take this back here, guys. Sorry. Yeah, a conspiracy. My ass. They've been putting this shit out there for us for a very fucking long time. Hit the thumbs up for me. Excuse me. And if you've noticed too, I'm just gonna be all the fucking way real. Whether you're a fan of Donald Trump or not, a lot of the shit he's doing does seem to be in direct opposition to the depopulation agenda, right? The border wall, the emergency at the border and border crisis, right? Stopping the hormone blockers and mutilation of children, declaring there are two genders, just a lot of it, guys. appointing RFK Jr., the head of health, stopping the additives and shit to our food, the fluoride in our water, just, so you got to give credit where credit's due, and like I said, there is a flip side to that too. I mean, the motherfucker is punching the gas on the Stargate project and mRNA and all that shit. So I mean, there is that as well, making AI and all of this a way bigger part of things than I think a lot of us are comfortable with. What's sad is like you can't be your own press in today's world because of censorship, but there's also a federal ban on censorship as well. So there is a lot of things, guys, that does seem to be battling this agenda. Which you got to give credit where it's due, but it's like I don't think people take the shit very seriously. We have people like myself and people like you that are out here speaking and posting and creating and trying to raise awareness and trying to just raise human consciousness as a whole and shine a light on a lot of this shit. I don't think people understand just how much they act as agents of the system by attacking people like myself and people like you. Instead of looking at the information that's being presented, it's always about the person's character, and which is fucking crazy. I can see why people wear masks and hide their identity online. That was one of the things I definitely wish I would have done back when I started years ago, is like not because I'm afraid of being retaliated against. They would know, the government would know who I was, whether you did or not, and they'd retaliate just the same as they have, and probably will continue to do so the rest of my life till I stop or I'm dead. But because people take my character flaws and like my vices and the things that are, my shortcomings, and they use that as a way to undermine the message, right? Or a way to discredit the information. So it no longer matters if the information that's being presented is true. It's like, oh, this guy's a fucking a satanic fucking junkie with the face tat and you know what I mean? Like they would just come up with anything they can, to discredit me. That way you don't hear what's being said. You don't see what's being presented. You just focus on the person that's presenting it. And it's like, well, I couldn't possibly believe anything that comes from this guy because people judge appearance, right? And so many people, and here's the thing, as you guys know, and I know every one of you know this, because if you're watching it, you're also a person who's tried to raise awareness yourself and wake people up that you know and care about and love. I'm not talking about the woke agenda. That's bullshit. I'm talking about true awareness, right? And spiritual awareness and the spiritual awakening. And you guys know that when you talk about a person's religion, when you talk about a person's political beliefs and affiliation, clubs and shit that they're members of, their vocation, occupation, the industry they belong to, the people they voted for, just all of these things, right? What people do is they identify, you know, with those things. That's most people's identities, and it's sad, but most people's identity is made up of those things, right? So their identity is made up of the fact that they're a Christian, right? Or they're a Catholic. Most people's identity is made up of the fact that they're Democrat or a Republican or they're pro Trump or anti Trump. Or you see what I'm saying? Most people's identity is made up of the fact that they're a nurse or a doctor. They work in the medical field, right? They're a police officer. You feel me? So when you cast doubt or bring into question any of those things, whether it's personal attack or not, they take it personally because they identify with that so much. And if they're homosexual, then every part of the homosexual agenda becomes offensive to them if you question it. Transgender, every part of the transgender agenda becomes offensive if like you can't say, hey, it's hard to separate by saying like, hey, there are some Christians that are wonderful, remarkable people, but for the most part, a lot of these churches belong to these Christian alliances. They're part of corporations that are government funded. They're 501c3. They have doctrines that were actually created by Darby and Schofield, right? The Schofield Study Bible, and these aren't even founded in the Bible. These doctrines of fucking pre-tribulation rapture and all this shit. You can't say that the transgender agenda are targeting children but by reading stories to them in school and the mutilation and the puberty blockers and all of this, or the homosexual agenda is popularizing it in our movies and things like that by actually making it a requirement for people to win like Oscars and shit and Grammys and shit like that by having that in their movies and, like having that in their employ and able to even win awards because it's the promotion of that, right? Creating race wars, the same thing by, attacking white privilege or separating people based on their race or, the my body, my choice, dividing people based on their sex, right? And getting people riled up over these different agendas that they are rolling out, right? And these different issues, and then it becomes this thing to where they punish and reward people on social media based on those beliefs. So if it's accepted to have a liberal minded point of view and a progressive point of view socially, right? Because a lot of the rich, the elite, right? It's considered to be intellectual to be liberally minded. And they don't understand that classic liberalism, is nothing like what we're seeing today. That's not true liberalism, right? This is a perverse version of it. I consider myself a classic liberal, right? More akin or aligned to a libertarian, which is very bad in the eyes of the government, might as well be fucking bin Laden, being a libertarian, or identifying with that, so it's like, people identify with these things, so it's like they see you support one thing, they think you support all of it. If you voted for Trump over Kamala, then you must be a bigot, you must be a racist, you must hate women because they don't, everything's taken out of context. You've probably said things in your life that could be taken as, a racial comment at one point in your life, whether it was or not, right? Somebody could have taken out of context. And imagine your whole life being in the spotlight. That one thing you said, and everybody, says that everything you've done since then makes you a racist. Or you said one thing about a man or a woman, and everybody your whole life says you hate men or women. It's like, this is what we do. This is what we do. It's like the most hypocritical, judgmental society. It's like these online lynch mobs, right? And that's where cancel culture has come in. So because people they're envious of the people that are in the public spotlight to begin with, right? Because we're now in this era of culture where everybody has an opinion and they believe theirs is right, and the algorithms reinforce their opinions and create these echo chambers online where all they hear is their own opinions be regurgitated back to them constantly through the algorithms and the things that they belong to. And they can't even have healthy discourse or debate with anybody of an opposing belief or viewpoint, right? Um, and they've been programmed to the extent to where they're completely based on emotions, right? And it's like they are so triggered by things that the emotional response just cuts off all logic, right? All logic. And then when you're heavily identifying with these things, you see it always as an us versus them thing, you know? And it's like you believe whatever side of the line in the sand you're standing on is the right side and everybody else is wrong, right? They're an enemy of, freedom. They're an enemy of women, an enemy of, whatever, America or whatever, right? And it's just not that black and white. It never has been, but it's like that's the society that we've created. And we are completely polarized, right? By this dualistic concepts that we see, and it's divide and conquer. And instead of focusing on the people that are actually creating these agendas and pitting us against each other and, propagating these nefarious things, instead we're focused on each other and we will defend our captors, right? We have this massive psychosis and this mass condition of Stockholm syndrome, where we identify with our captors, right? And we see them as our protectors, and it's just fucking wild. And we'll defend them to the death, literally. Yeah. So, give me 1 second here. And we're going to play this first here. Let me pull this up. And I've got quite a few videos I'm going to be sharing as we go through this before we get into the documents and all of this. And I do want to ask everybody in the chat to please hit the thumbs up. Yeah, please hit the thumbs up if you can for me. If you're in the chat, it does help with the algorithms. So, like I said, we have seen what appears to be this kind of this stand in the name of like populism and nationalism by Trump and RFK Jr. against this globalist agenda by all of the different methods I just named. But there's a flip side to that where it appears as if it is being accelerated in other ways. Look at this bitch. And we're going to look at the nuclear method. We're going to look at the technological method. We're going to look at all of it. What in the fuck is wrong with her? Does anybody know what the fuck is wrong with Angela Merkel? No sound on the clip. No sound on the clip. Let's see here. That is so weird.
Depopulation of the country, saying my character flaw is a way to undermine.
Hold on, guys. That's weird. There's no sound on the clip. Hold on. Let's see what we got here. Let me see if I can fix this. That's weird that you guys can't hear that. Hold on. Where am I at here? Okay. Let me stop the screen share just for a moment. Give me just a second, guys. I don't know why the sound went all wonky there. I see why. I do see why. Here we go. Hold on. Reset. Weird. Okay. I don't know why that switched like that. It's so weird. Okay, hold on, guys. One moment. Can I get this to fix here? Okay.
What in the fuck is wrong with her? Does anybody know what the fuck?
Sorry about that. Okay, I have no clue what's going on with this here. Just give me 1 second, guys. All right. Sorry about this. I have no clue. I think it's when I disconnected earlier. Okay. All right. So hopefully this fixes it here. Guys, I have to let me know in just a moment. Almost done here. Okay. Okay. All right, let's try it. Okay, now let's see what we got. Sorry about that, guys. I do apologize. Let's see if this plays here.
Zendri is on YouTube.
What you are about to see is likely the most important video you will encounter about what awaits us in 2025 and beyond, and why. Not only will it expose crucial facts that many seem to have forgotten,
Let me know
but
if
it
you
will
guys can
also
hear it.
provide precise predictions about what will happen during Donald Trump's second term. These predictions are grounded in extensive research, analysis of globalist state media, and meticulous pattern recognition.
You remember when Eisenhower left after, what did he say? There's a shadow government in America. It's called the military industrial complex. And what he was saying was, even I couldn't stand up to him, a 4-star general. So you better watch out. And here we are with Mr. Pretty Boy, liberal Democrat. We're now bombing 7, 8 different countries. He's trying to start a third world war with Russia. We're setting up NATO forces all around the border of the U.S., Russia. What the hell are we doing? What is going on? We're in Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria. What the?
Further, it is very important that the Russian government consider carefully their continued support for the Assad regime.
You got the buzz sound out too.
You and President Trump organized an international coalition.
All right. Let me know in the chat if I think we got the buzz sound fixed. Everything. Yeah, let me know. You're on headphones. Oh, no, I heard that buzz too. I don't know what it is. I got new microphones and shit, and one of them, I think it's like picking up a feedback, probably from my cell phone or something when it does that. But I don't hear the buzz anymore. So let me know if you guys hear the little buzz, and if you guys can hear the video.
To remove Assad.
Those steps are underway.
In 2001, former NATO General Wesley Clark was presented a classified memo which outlines several countries that NATO planned to invade.
This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Cam. I do appreciate you.
We're going to keep increasing the pressure on the Assad regime and working with the Syrian opposition.
What Russia and what Iran and what Syria have done recently is a humanitarian disgrace.
There's only a few more independent countries left that control their own oil and natural resources, namely Russia, China, Iran, and Syria. And each and every single one of those countries are being attacked as we speak through proxies such as NATO, Ukraine, and Israel.
The worst thing possible, they're both in on it. They're for terrorizing, doing terrorism on other countries so we can steal their natural resources for American corporations. They agree on imperialism, the thing we got to stop the most. The thing the left and the right agrees on the most, which is stopping these stupid regime change wars for capitalism so we can steal their natural resources.
We're keeping the oil. We have the oil. The oil is secure. We left troops behind only for the oil. We've taken control of the oil in the Middle East, the oil that we're talking about, the oil that everybody was worried about. The U.S. has control of that.
So I think Trump talks a good game. But what he actually does when he's in office is another matter. And I would note here, just as a final point, that Donald Trump, when he ran for president and in his initial few months in the White House, said that he wanted to improve relations with Russia. He viewed Putin as a friend. He wanted to put an end to NATO and get out of Europe. None of that happened. And in fact, what did happen is that in 2017, it was Trump who started arming the Ukrainians. So Donald Trump can talk all he wants about how he's
look at his hand right there. He's definitely making the symbol.
Going to do a 180-degree turn regarding American policy on Ukraine. But in my opinion, that's not going to happen.
The Trump administration has perilously canceled the INF treaty, the nuke deal that all other U.S. presidents had respected and left in place. He broke the treaty. Not only is Mr. Trump not working for the Russians, in fact, his administration has been hostile toward Russia. It has renewed and intensified sanctions to essentially hammer the Russian economy. It is pressuring Germany's Angela Merkel, a Russian trading partner, to stop importing Russian oil.
And this is what I was saying earlier. What the fuck is wrong with this lady? Do you see her like shaking and shit? What the hell is wrong with her?
Russian economy. It has shipped lethal arms to Ukraine with the suggestion that maybe they can be used against Russia. It has bombed Syria.
Yeah, and we always lose people when we start showing shit about Trump. So I don't give a fuck at this point, honestly. And just kind of like just keep it rolling. So like we were talking about too, with the whole agenda here, and I'm sorry about the audio and all of that. I don't know what the hell happened. I think it's because I have my headphones disconnected. I got Bluetooth in, probably frying my brain as well. So I'll have to edit that part out. But, like I said, we have Trump that has taken steps, to counteract a lot of, the eugenics part of the global depopulation agenda. But we're seeing this push forward through technology, right? As well as the war agenda. You've seen what they were talking about here in the video in reference to Trump when it comes to, his relations with Russia. We also see what has happened with Trump as far as China, right? So it's like him and the superpowers definitely been gassing that bus up and creating more conflict when it comes to that. So now I want to show you here as we move through into the more technological part of this. So.
This is the view from inside the planes that spray chemtrails into the atmosphere.
This is fucking crazy. And you can see barium, aluminum, strontium. These are heavy metals. These heavy metals not only do they disrupt the electrical flow of our body and the way our body heals and communicates and operates within itself. They also cause damage to the frontal lobe of the brain, and make us basically walking antennas for, their 5G technology and the different things that they are, disseminating through their various forms of frequency. So now we're going to look at the smart dust, a lot of the things that they're actually putting into these planes as they're dropping them as well. Here we go.
And they also talk about microdust as a weapon. They say that this micron-sized mechanized dust, which is distributed as an aerosol and inhaled into the lungs, the dust mechanically bores into the lung tissue and executes various pathological missions. They say it's a completely new type of warfare, and it is legal. It's legal. This is what they're going to do to all the humans on the face of this planet. It's all legal. And then they talk about how the use of frequencies will be used in warfare. And we know, for example, the smart meters that are being deployed around the globe, the replacement of our electric meters, which will also and does include the replacement of all of our gas meters and our water meters as well, and will be connected to our food supply when they collapse the currency and they issue energy allowances, and that will all be controlled through the metering system. But they talk about the use of low frequencies, microwave frequencies, and they mention in this NASA document the U.S. Army report. The U.S. Army report is on our website, smartmetersmurder.com. It's about a 20-page Army document that talks about the use of frequencies to target the enemy. We're the enemy.
And we're going to look at some of this too here. Where's it at here? You can see here, according to the AI overview, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is a plan adopted by the United Nations in 2015 to achieve global sustainability. The agenda includes 17 sustainable development goals. The aim is to end poverty and hunger, ensure human rights for all, achieve gender equality, and protect the planet and its natural resources, tackle climate change, preserve oceans and forests, ensure everyone has access to quality education and universal health coverage, and end environmental degradation. The SDGs are intended to be a blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet. And they are based on the idea that sustainable development requires balancing economic growth, social well-being, and environmental protection. And now remember, when we were looking at this, and we're going to get into some of the documents as we kind of switch around here. When we were looking at, this, and this is the smart meters, I believe, right here. What we actually seen was that balance that they're trying to create, and it was 179 countries or some shit like that. There's already 150 whatever countries have already agreed to this, and that balance that they're trying to create is not for you and I. It's for the big corporations and the globalists, and to make it easier to control and enslave us. So here we go. This is the website for the smart meters here. We're just going to look a little bit at this. The cooking of humanity. Cell phone frequencies have become brain addicting. addictive. And now that we are faced with cell phone addiction, we are being warned by the California Department of Health to limit cell phone use. Keep in mind, the Department of Health are behind fluoridation in all communities, required vaccinations, and the department acknowledges climate change as being caused by too many people using too much stuff. Of course, ignoring global corporate weather control systems that are artificially creating the climate change. It's our fault. Now, let's take a look here.
Canada, Europe, Japan, and who knows where. We are seeing one of the strangest global events of our lifetimes. Power companies in the USA, Canada, Europe, Japan, and who knows where else, who have no business other than to safely deliver utility services to us, have been enlisted by some global agenda to install radiation emitting surveillance devices on our homes that they are calling smart meters. The reason that this is so strange is that even after we have told them that these devices are dangerous, harmful, unlawful, and invasive, they flatly ignore us and continue to attempt the installations as if we were speaking to a hole in the ground. We know now that our power companies were perfectly aware of the problems with these meters from the beginning, and they even developed and planned strategies to withhold information about the meters, to install the devices without our knowledge or consent, to lie to us about what the digital meters are and what they do, and refuse to provide verifiable answers to questions about those meters. They could not have sent a more clear signal that the meters are not in our interest. Our power companies have allowed themselves to become partisans and to become enemies of their customers' health, safety, and privacy in some strange and new program to collect data and possibly harm everyone who has a utility meter. The new digital meters are designed to do things utility meters don't need to do, and power companies refuse to explain why they are so determined to push this on us. Most of us have become very dependent on our utilities, and our dependency is now being exploited by a globally coordinated internationally. United Nations Agenda 21 has become suspected as a key driver, because that agenda calls for global controls of population behaviors and collection of data at the local level, just as the digital meters are designed to do. Those United Nations programs have been directly funded by proponents of global governance and depopulation, such as Ted Turner, Bill Gates, George Soros, and other members of secret societies advocating depopulation, such as the Club of Rome. Again, this is currently largely rumor and speculation, and we certainly need more facts to fully understand the bizarre experiment of invading private homes all over the world with high-tech monitoring devices posing as utility meters.
Right. And this just gives them the ability to be incredibly invasive. And, there are a million different companies that have emerged, to actually try to block these smart meters. And I don't know how effective they actually are, in doing this. But basically, and would you put it, and they have the localization of Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030, right? They've seen this taken down to the local level, and we see things like the riot gear and shit like that that are given to police now that have basically, turned them into paramilitary. These are a lot of times this comes from the UN and other world organizations and corporations that are given to cities and local governments. They get their funding by signing away, elected sheriffs and shit like that, by signing on to the localization of Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030. So it's like bringing the UN to all the local governments, and in order for them to get their funding, they get all their riot vehicles, and you guys see all of the shit that police have now. In order for them to get them funding, they have to agree to that, right? So that's how they bring a lot of this in, through the police. That way, if there ever was a collapse of the government and there was war, martial law, anything like that, they could basically mobilize any local government as a federal unit. And what they do when they sign those agreements is they sign in a national emergency that they actually become federalized, right? So it's really the federalization of the local governments is what they're doing through that. Now, one of the plans she was talking about was actually from NASA. Where's it at here? Right here. Future strategic issues of warfare circa 2025. Capabilities of the enemy after next, the ongoing worldwide technological revolution, economic trends, potential nature of farther term warfare. Bots, Borgs, and humans welcome you to 2025. And isn't it interesting? We're now in 2025, right? This presentation is based on the futures work for and with United States Air Force, you guys, DARPA, right? You can see all of them that are a part of this, right? Australian DOD, Joint Command, Joint Futures, National Research Council, Army after next, United States Air Force, so on and so forth, JCOM. This presentation is meant to incite thought and discussion and is based in all cases upon existing data, trends, analysis, technologies. Examples given, no pixie dust. Provides in some cases a somewhat broader view of prospective developments and issues, the utilization and application of 2025 projections, inputs to future warfighting concepts developments, inputs to new procurement decisions, and heads up for intel community. Going in assumptions, politics can and does change overnight. Examples given, Russia, Iran, Iraq, Pakistan, etc. Potential capabilities is the future warfare issue, not who, but what. Need to plan differently. The world is in the throes of triple exponential IT, bio, and nano technological revolutions. Changes occurring at scales of months instead of decades. Zeroth order potential effects upon defense and offense equipment, con ops, threats, spaceship Earth. The crews are plundering the ship's supplies, tinkering with the temperature and life support controls, still looking for the instruction manual, engaging in bloody skirmishes in every corner of the vessel, increasing the size of the crew by 2 million per week. Humans have taken over and vastly shortened evolution of the planet, global warming, pollution, deforestation, huge public work of the human species, genomic design, repair, mind children, products and life forms, cross-species molecular breeding, directed evolution. Currently, the order of 70% of the world's research conducted outside of the U.S. to first order a percentage of the GDP. U.S. produces order of 18% of the world's GDP. Order of 70% of U.S. research now commercial as opposed to government sponsored. Nanotechnology research, 29% in Europe, 28% in Japan, 27% in US, and 16% in the others. The technological ages of humankind, the hunter-killer groups in the million BC to 10K BC, agriculture 10,000 BC to 1800 AD, the Industrial Revolution, which was 1800 to 1950, IT is 1950 to 2020, and the bio nano is 2022. And after that will be the virtual age. The hunter-gatherer, it was nature that provided. In the agricultural, it was controlled nature, meaning plants and animals. In the industrial, it was mechanized agriculture. In the IT, bio, and nano, it's automating industry and agriculture. So it's the automation of industry, the automation of agriculture. And in virtual, it's the robotization of IT, bio, nano, industrial, and agricultural. And we can kind of see, too, that we are really between nano and virtual right now. It's like we're seeing nano like being put into the full throes, but we're also seeing the sprinkles of virtual now beginning too. I don't think nano is going to be that long. It's actually laying the foundation for virtual by everything being lined with the nano. Key future technologies, all highly synergistic at the frontiers of the small and a feeding frenzy off each other. IT is silicon, bio, optical, quantum, nano computing, no end in sight. Another 10 to the 6 power growth. Virtual reality, holographic, immersive, ubiquitous comms, hyperspectral sensors, and virtual presence. Automatic, robotic, everything. Huge cost reductions. Bio is lifespan doubling, genetic engineering before birth, and these are designer babies. Plants irrigated by seawater, food, petrochemicals, feedstock, minerals, and terraforming, which we see through, the chemtrails and all that. They're already terraforming the planet for something. Nano is carbon nanotubes, 600 times the strength to weight of steel. Assemblers and living factories, which is crazy, like living where, you work. Huge cost reductions, worldwide IT revolution, comms, computing, sensors, and electronics. U.S. commercial IT research and development, over $100 billion a year. Factor of 1 million, further improvement, silicon, molecular, quantum, bio, and optical, beyond human AI, automatics and robotics in the large, immersive multi-sensory VR and holodecks, ubiquitous multi-physics, hyperspectral sensors, land, sea, air, and space, micro nanosats, and GNC sensors, etc. The worldwide impacts of the ongoing IT revolution upon society. Telecommuting, teleshopping, teleentertainment, teletravel, teleeducation, telemedicine, telecommerce, telepolitics, telesocialization. And we're seeing all of that, right? The IT status, improvements in computing since 59, 10 times the further possibility in the next 30 years. Provides better than human capabilities, and 100 million telecommuters worldwide now, expected to at least double in 15 years. India graduates 3 times more software engineers in the US, more software written in Bangalore than Southern California. And IW effectively constitutes a fourth weapon of mass destruction. Some IT predictions, quantum computing initially available in 5 years, which we have quantum computing now from when this was written. 15% of all power today is used by computers and will reach 60% by 2010. I think this came out in 98 or something like that. Wearable, implantable, on-person electronics and comms, computing, sensory augmentation, health monitoring, and brain stimulation. AI and beyond computing. Human, and you can see that this was part of their plan, and we're already very far along in this. Human brain characteristics and capabilities: 100 billion neurons, 100 trillion connections, 200 calculations a second, slow speed of neural circuitry, 20 million billion calculations a second, excellent at parallel computing, pattern recognition, and poor at sequential thinking, operates via random tries. Machine capabilities are currently 10,000 billion calculations a second, 100 billion by 2004. By 2010, 20 million billion available, and by 2025 on a PC. Excuse me. And by 2030, PC has collective computing power of a town full of human minds. Wow. The U.S. Human Brain Project, which we already know, the Brain Initiative and all of that is in full throes as well. Begun early 90s, funded by 16 organizations across 5 agencies. And look who they are: the NIH, the DOD, NASA, Department of Energy, right? AKA neuroinformatics, the intersection of neuroscience and informatics. Exploding field. 10,000 individual presentations at annual meeting of Society for Neuroscience, from molecular geneticists to cognitive psychologists. Determining detailed neuroanatomy of the human brain, or digital brain atlas. and the use of IT to study the brain, the use of brain info to aid in IT and AI. The imagination engine, aka creativity machine, aka creative agent. Current AI is the best bet, not a rule-based expert system. Generates new ideas, concepts via starving a trained neural net of meaningful inputs, forcing it to dream, cavitate, create new concepts, etc. An attendant neural net used to capture, record, evaluate, and report on these writings. And we already see that this happens, right? The dream machines, AI creates art and all kinds of shit now, right? It can write things for you and everything. In this worldwide economy, our ability to create wealth is not bounded by physical limits and resources, but your ability to come up with new ideas. However, even universal wealth will not obviate the other causes of warfare, which include politics, faith, religion, megalomania, and territorial disputes. Global problems and solutions, serious problems, energy, water, food, land, population growth, wealth generation, polluting and warming, killer AP solutions, motivational, inexpensive, web-based, asynchronous, distance learning, biomass, food via seawater, irrigation, and current wastelands. Inexpensive, motivational, asynchronous, web-based distance education enables the demise of the U.S. underclasses. Wealth creation from enabled invention. Stabilization of world population, which means no more growth, right? Even more rapid technology diffusion, equalization of haves and have-nots, which I don't know if that's happened with the equalization of that, unless they're talking about the basically the removal of the middle class, right? Then the haves and the have-nots. You have just rich or poor, nobody in between. Altered political military outlooks worldwide, i.e. changes everything. Motivational learner, web-based asynchronous distance only method of providing requisite and improved educational breadth, depth, quality, responsiveness to shifting global economic warfare requirements, accelerated increase in knowledge. At orders of magnitude, 1, reduce societal and individual cost. 2, increase convenience and accessibility. By 2025, 40% of private and 15% of public colleges and universities are expected to close due to web-based competition. And I shit you not, not only do we see like online schools and shit like that, but we're seeing even people like Jordan Peterson now starting their own schools, right? Which we know he's part of the intellectual dark web and all that. I actually like Jordan Peterson. But it's because they have demeaned university education so much because, for one, you go there to get radicalized, right? It's what happens to people that go to university. They go get radicalized. They get a useless fucking education. They're in a tremendous amount of debt for their lifetime. They can't get jobs after they leave and all of that. So it's been rendered obsolete, basically, for the most part. I mean, there's some people that still do good out of that, but very few. And now, you know, you can pay a couple $1,000s for a person like Jordan Peterson. You can learn all the things that he taught at university, not in a university, for not even a fraction of the price, right? And we also see the same thing with like web-based universities. You can get degrees and stuff like that for a fraction of the price. Northern VA businessman recently donated $100 million to set up a free Ivy League class online. Like I said, the ultimate education approach, plug and play, direct silicon or other such device connection to the brain, which we know the neural lace and shit, like Elon Musk, very rapid uploads, education in minutes instead of many years, which they say that neural lace will actually increase the broadband of your brain by like fucking 100 times or 100 million times or some crazy shit like that. Like the broadband of your mind, the ability to perceive, receive, and utilize information is fucking exponential. I actually was I forget who I was watching, but I was watching like this thing that was saying, you know, that, you know, the truly intelligent people, And you could say this was propaganda or whatever. I don't know. It just depends on what your point of view on it is. But they were talking about how actually, if it cost $100,000, right, to get the neural lace, that it would be more than worth it. You pay that, you get a loan, and this is what a strategy that people will actually implement in the future when it becomes available to the public, for everybody. Get a loan for $100K, buy the neural lace, the neural implant, and on that neural implant, you would be able to use your mind, use your brain. If you wanted to, you could use it as storage, right? Storage space, and get paid to store data for companies and people, or you could use it for a vast swath of ideas and they're saying ideas will be like the new, occupation, getting paid for ideas, or start your own businesses online. They're saying it expands your brain function so fucking much in the broadband of your mind so much that the smartest people will pay that $100,000 and become fucking millionaires overnight. So advantage of shallow sea and desert production of biomass via seawater irrigation. Closed CO2 cycle obviates global warming. Food, petrochemical feedstock, materials and clothing, etc. Energy, in reliance on the Middle East, right? Which we know, like the free energy and all that this is also becoming a thing. Terraforming, alter desertification, preservation, production of fresh water, rich mineral source, seawater, utilization of wastelands in the Sahara, etc. Probable circa 2025 societal changes. And let's see if society is like this, guys. Much increased lifespan, and that's the biological. So what did they say in that study we looked at earlier? We're at 73 and are about to be at 77 for the lifespan. So yeah, since this happened, yeah, we've definitely increased lifespan. Solution to energy, water, and warming, which, filtration of water. People filter water in their homes now, right? Far more global distribution of technology, education, economics, wealth, and IT. And that's true. Absolutely, that's true. Technology it's mass produced in every arena of life all over the world. Tremendous increase in capability of automatic and robotics, everything, IT, bio, and nano, and that's also true. I did a video the other day and I showed you guys all the robotics and shit like that, right? So that's very much so happening, resulting in reduced tensions associated with haves and have-nots. That's not true. And historical religious issues. Got that. Yeah, there is historical religious issues. Religions are taking a nosedive, right? Also resulting greatly in increased individual destructive power and general societal disaffection. RWT machines. I'm not sure what that means, but we do have disaffection with society. So people don't care about society anymore. Major emerging law enforcement issues. And these are definitely issues. Privacy, ubiquitous micro and nano sensors. We just showed the smart meters and all of that. IT net crime. Absolutely. There's identity fraud, all that shit on the net. Biocrime, binary pathogens, and genetics, which we haven't truly seen a whole lot of that, but we did show in the video the other day, how they, these biological weapons based on genetic sequencing that they're now developing. Governments are actually developing and have been. Protection that, like China to attack Caucasians and Israel to attack Palestinians and shit like that. Protection of human electronic implants. People already have different devices implemented, so within their body, that's becoming more and more prominent. Protection of CONUS beyond terrorism. I'm not sure what that is. CON-US. I'm not sure what that is. Anybody know what that is? That acronym. Societal disaffection and upheaval caused by rapid technological changes, road and air rage, psychosomatic illnesses, and withdrawal. Interesting. And of particular concern, uncontrolled, uncontrollable self-replication of, and this is interesting, brilliant robots in IT, nano replicators, rampant recombinant. Current competitive landscape, US produces only 18% of the world's GDP, 70% of research conducted offshore, $400 billion a year trade deficit, 32 other nations devote a larger percent of their GDP to research, fifth in number of R&D personnel, labor unit, 3% savings rate versus 30% in Asia, 13th out of 30 in the student math science scores, an emerging multipolar economic world. And this is showing you the chart here. Biorevolution applications, farm animals, drugs, and spare parts. That's a thing already. Fast growing plants on or near surface and seawater irrigated plants for biomass, energy, and closed CO2 cycles. Polymer growing plants, spider genes, and goats allow spider silk spinning from goat milk for biosteel, 3.5 times the strength of aramid fibers for armor. Binary bioweaponry examples, confluence of IT, bio, and nano. A brain of a sea lamprey inserted and connected to a body of a robotic fish, an initial cyborg. And they have done shit like this. I mean, in labs, they've created it was mice, I believe, robo mice. So I mean, they've done things like this. This is fucking crazy. And then some of this shit's scary. Choo Choo, a flesh and plant eating robot that hunts bio-digest natural foods to live off the land. That is really scary. Carbon nanotubes. This is a thing. C1000 or 1 million. Buckminster fullerene carbon, 100 times the strength and 1/6 the weight of steel, 8 times better armor, low energy and molecular petaflop computing, ultra capacitor, high temperature, revolutionary power generation and storage opportunities, ultra capacitors, nanotube storage. And a lot of this, we are just beyond some of this. Some of this, they couldn't even wrap their heads around where we were going with a lot of this shit, right? We're now trying to store shit on DNA and crystals and shit. We're beyond a lot of what they think we were going to be doing. Freeform fabrication, powder, wire, metallurgy using robotic magnetically steered electron beams to create accreting local melts, grow instead of cut. No fasteners, no strong backs for fasteners, nearly infinite fatigue life, excellent metallurgy, repairable metals at lower weight than far more expensive composites, aluminum vortex combustor, micro-powered aluminum fed into a vortex combustor burns seawater, provides AIP with high energy density, efficiency for inexpensive, would allow enemy after next, affordably threaten, multitudinous inshore, okay. We're going to look at some of the nano tags, smart dust. Yeah, sensors implanted during manufacturing, smart cards, biosensors. Yes, all of this is already here. Some sensor swarms, smart dust, nano tags placed on everything. Yeah, they have those. That came out with iPhones and shit, the nano tags. Optimal positioning of explosive dust, air explosive, formation of explosive lenses, infiltration of deeply buried other such targets, microdust weaponry, a mechanical analog to micron-sized mechanized dust, which is distributed as an aerosol and inhaled into the lungs. Dust mechanically bores into lung tissue and executes various pathological missions. A wholly new class of weaponry, which is legal. Given now to soon. Gigabyte data transfer rates, optical comms, petaflop computing, exceptional AI, wondrous ubiquitous land, sea, air, space, multi-physics, hyperspectral sensor swarms, military, commercial, and scientific. Survival requires dispersion, size, reduction, and concealment. Robotic swarm technologies, primarily commercial. Yeah, they have that. It's in drones. Assumptions, combat in 2025. Precision strike, micro sensors, camo, spoofing, robotics, bio and chemical munitions. Logistic assets highly vulnerable in or out of theater. In and near theater ports, airfields, possibly unusable. Beam weapons, increasingly prevalent. That's right. We have directed energy weapons, which, matter of fact, right, there's a bill to amend Title 10 United States Code for the rapid acquisition of directed energy weapon systems by the Department of Defense and for other purposes. So, how about that, right? You know, so how about that, bud? Where was I at here? Cruise missiles, the range payload, all of this, yes. Warheads, okay. Just going to kind of skim here. EMPs, psychological warfare, informational, net, psi warfare, radio frequency, chemical, biological, brain interactions, low frequency modulation, yes. Microwaves, behavioral performance, yes, absolutely. Seizures, gross alteration in brain function, increases in blood flow, lethality. Damn, dude. Fingerprintless bioarchipelago, bacteriological, fatal to disabling, short to long time scales, prions, parasites, carcinogens, toxins, hormones, biohacking, natural genomic, airborne varieties of Ebola, etc., binary agents, via imported products, vitamins, clothing, food, genomically targeted pathogens. That's what we were just talking about, the, ethno targeting, long-term shock and all. What the fuck? Weaponized by U.S. Easily transmitted via aerosol. Microwave RF, chemical antifunctional weaponry, psychological effects. I mean, you can honestly see exactly what psi war, acoustic weaponry, microdust. Yeah. Everything they have in this, and I'm just going to drop this in the chat because I don't want to go through the whole fucking thing, but do I even have the chat up anymore? Yeah, I'm going to put it over here. No. Hold on. Hard to see past this camera. And just like what they were saying in the document, look, lab holding Ebola virus in Congo's Goma is at risk amid fighting. So Ebola fears. How about that? Ain't that fucking crazy?
Heavy gunfire echoed the streets of eastern Congo's biggest city on Tuesday. Rwandan-backed rebels entered Goma the day before, a dramatic escalation of a 3-decade conflict that has also triggered protests in the capital, Kinshasa. But the rebels, led by the M23 militia, are facing pockets of resistance from the army and its backers. This social media video has been verified using previous footage of the area and satellite imagery, though the identities or affiliations of the troops were not confirmed. The violence has left, the United Nations said, many dead bodies scattered in the streets.
Wow.
The humanitarian situation in and around Goma remains extremely vulnerable.
So they're going to blame the Ebola leak basically on the fighting here. Wow. They want you to be godless, sexless, genderless, childless, depressed, anxious, afraid, fat, drug addicted, lonely, physically weak, mentally weak, in debt, isolated, living in a pod, eating bugs, and dependent on the state for everything. Right. By the way, here's how the visionary Aldous Huxley had to say on the perfect dictatorship, the slaves would love their servitude. The perfect dictatorship would have the appearance of a democracy, but would basically be a prison without walls, in which the prisoners would not even dream of escaping. It would essentially be a system of slavery, where through consumption and entertainment, the slaves would love their servitude. Yeah, here we go. Normies, those don't exist and they're not used by the government. Shown here, introduced in the Senate in 2016. Directed Energy Weapons Systems Acquisition Act of 2016. This bill amends the Bob Stump National Defense Authorization Act for the fiscal year 2003 to state that it supplies or supports services urgently needed to eliminate deficiency in directed energy weapon systems. The DoD may specifically rapid acquisition procedures to acquire and deploy needed offensive or defensive directed energy weapon systems, capabilities, supplies, and associated support services. Directed energy weapon system means military action using highly focused sound, electromagnetic, or particle beam energy to incapacitate, damage, or destroy enemy equipment, facilities, or personnel. This bill redesignates the DoD's High Energy Laser Joint Technology Office as a Joint Directed Energy Program Office. The office shall, 1, develop a strategic plan for development and transition of directed energy weapons capabilities, and 2, use new and revised DoD policies to accelerate the development and transition of directed energy capabilities. And that was the bill that we just looked at. And my question is, who exactly is the United States government using directed energy weapons against? You and me. And that is the fucking truth right there. I've had my ass blasted by these motherfuckers more times than I can count. And you see it right there. When you try to tell people you're being hit by directed energy weapons, only thing you can really hear if you put it on video is you can hear the clicking. You'll hear the clicking of the energy depending on what type of weaponry they're using, right? But most people don't even think this shit's real. Confirmation: the drones were U.S. owned and operated and cleared by the FAA the whole time. Yep, it wasn't the enemy. What then? Remember the drones?
And welcome
here?
back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. We have a live picture there at the White House. Well, we got some clarity today on the drone situation over the skies of New Jersey late last year. Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, saying those drones seen flying were quote unquote not the enemy. She says they were FAA approved drones. Here's Caroline Leavitt.
Check it out. I'll show you these drones here. We're going to just fast forward so you can see them, the videos of the
temporary
drone.
flight restrictions that were going on there. It was from the surface up to 2,000 feet. So when we look at the epicenter, that started on November 25th, 2024. It expired on December 26th, 2024, right about the time that all this was taking place. There was absolutely no question. Actually, the temporary flight restriction said for special security reasons. So, Andrew, that was publicly, it was available publicly. It was harder to find unless you know where to look on tfr.fa.gov. But in every comment that I made, I said, you've got to start to look at that because that being the epicenter, that's where it was taking place. That started call it the paranoia. I did my best to belay some fears here, but there was no question about the fact that was going on. That led a lot of other drones to go up. They're legal. I mean, you can fly drones. You can, I can. So a lot of people took drones in the sky. A lot of people were mistaking things that they saw in the sky for drones. So one, you've got to look to the fact that was public, that period of time that was publicly out there from 11/25 of 2024, right before Christmas Day, right after Christmas Day, December 26, 2024. That's when this was published. And then that came to an end. And then, of course,
Yeah, well, and the whole thing with the drone technology, That's all part of this too. The drones are part of surveillance. The drones have weapon capabilities and anything. The Trump administration fast tracking an economic crash to enact the Insurrection Act. I have been seeing a theory floating around that Trump administration is purposely fast tracking an economic crash on the poor because the resultant unrest would allow him to activate the Insurrection Act. And I got the Insurrection Act over here, which we'll look at just a second. And this would give the cover to suspend posse comitatus and deploy the military within the borders and declare a martial law. This recent suggestion to deport criminal American citizens seems like a modern rehashing of the Madagascar plan. Just criminalize a group of people who are resisting the government and ship them elsewhere after seizing their assets, of course. So, let's see here. The Insurrection Act, which is the law which lets the president deploy the military domestically and use it for civilian law enforcement, and is dangerously vague and in urgent need of reform. Yeah, the Insurrection Act authorizes the president to deploy military forces inside the United States to suppress rebellion or domestic violence or to enforce the law in certain situations. The statute implements Congress's authority under the Constitution to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. It is a primary exception to the Posse Comitatus Act, under which federal military forces are generally barred from participating in civilian law enforcement activities. Although it is often referred to as the Insurrection Act of 1807, the law is actually an amalgamation of different statutes enacted by Congress between 1792 and 1871. Today, these provisions occupy sections 251 through 255 entitled to the United States Code. Now, think about that. If we really were seeing, something like this to where there was this intentionally taking place where, trying to crash the economy, to declare the Insurrection Act. And you already see there's been a million different, and I've said this, I've done little, in my videos, and I have little shorts and shit as well that I've, pulling from those videos, or clipped from those videos, that are talking about, all the different national emergencies that have been declared, and a lot of people, of course, the Trump supporters are like, he's just doing his job and da-da-da-da. But don't you find it strange that all these different day one, it's almost everything was declared a fucking emergency, and I did think that was not only just suspicious, but, it makes you a little hesitant, it's like, okay, well, what the fuck is going on here? Why are all these emergencies being declared, and it makes you wonder what is being set up. A lot of people have believed for a long time, and we've seen during Trump's first regime, the National Guard and all that, occupying the nation's capital. So we know he's not above it, guys. We know he's not above it. And looking at Posse Comitatus, the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878, which removed the military from regular civil law enforcement, was enacted in response to the abuses resulting from the extensive use of the Army and civil law enforcement during the Civil War and the Reconstruction. The act allows legislated exceptions, has allowed the use of military in cases of domestic violence, protection of federal property, and enforcement of some federal laws and court orders. The growing drug problem in the United States and the inability of federal and local law enforcement officials to meet the challenge of massive drug inflow led Congress in 1981 to enact legislation providing for military cooperation within civilian law enforcement officials. Although recognizing Posse Comitatus restriction, the law opens the door for extensive use of the military and civilian law enforcement. And see, this is what I was talking about earlier, the localizing of United Nations, right? How they gave local law enforcement all the riot shields and all of this, right? Like basic, a lot of their own directed energy weapons and shit like that, this advanced weaponry, right? basically turn them into, military. And in order to do that, they had to sign to get that funding and to get those weapons. They had to sign and agree to the federalization of those local levels in case of emergencies and shit like that. So they will cooperate if they've gotten that money. And any city that has already did this. This has already happened. The Department of Defense developed directives to provide types of direct and indirect assistance to civilian law enforcement agencies. Currently, the military collects information and uses military equipment in tracking violators of drug laws. Demands for greater military involvement in the war on drugs are being made. Military cooperation with civil law enforcement agencies can be expected to increase. Yeah. So there you see it. And they could really just honestly, like they said, declare whatever they wanted to as far as this goes. To label a certain group of people. And we've seen that try to happen during the January 6th Capitol riots, right? Where they could label a certain group of people basically domestic terrorist. And I think we've seen that kind of like be set up, or a version of that, it could be, you could definitely see it taking place, in the near future. So. And before we get into these final documents here, let me close out some of this shit. And you can see that the United States, they have many, and the world has many, many different scenarios in which they could enact these emergencies, in which they could take total control of the population, in which large numbers of the population could be killed off, in catastrophes and wars and all of this. It's not just about sterilization, birth control, poisoning of the food, poisoning of the water, poisoning of the air. These are just, one way of looking at that. Terrible healthcare system, big pharma, jabs, and all of this. This is, the technology, directed energy, right? All of these things to create surveillance and essentially enslave all of us in certain ways. They have also built underground networks and roads and deep underground military bases all over the United States for other scenarios: nuclear bombs dropping, asteroids hitting, tidal waves, fucking zombie pandemics. They have a million different variations of how they could take us out, and they have the technology to fake these things as well, considering Project Bluebeam and things like that, right? And they've programmed the mass consciousness to be ready to accept this. You can see document sheds light on secret U.S. plans for apocalyptic scenarios dating back to the 50s, preparations for nuclear war, and revised after September 11th. The presidential directives are not shown to Congress. Newly disclosed documents have shed a crack of light on secret executive branch plans for apocalyptic scenarios, like the aftermath of a nuclear attack, when the president may activate wartime powers for national security emergencies. Now think about them just saying now they're going with the new lab leak shit over COVID. You have these countries in Africa that could Ebola leaks and shit like this. You can see many different ways that this could go. Until now, public knowledge of what the government put into those classified directives, which invoke emergency and wartime powers, which we're talking about insurrection, posse comitatus, all of this as well, right, has been limited to declassified descriptions of those developed in the early Cold War. In that era, they included steps like imposing martial law, rounding up people deemed dangerous, and censoring news from abroad. It's not been clear what is in the modern directives known as presidential emergency actions, with all these different emergencies being declared. because under administrations of both parties, none have been made public or shown to Congress. But the newly disclosed documents, which relate to George W. Bush's administrative efforts to revise the draft orders of the attacks of September 11th, 2001, offer clues. Several of the files provided to the New York Times by the Brennan Center for Justice show that the Bush-era effort partly focused on law that permits the president to take over or shut down communications networks in wartime. Right? If you cannot warn people, right? And what is that? Hold on. Let me see if I can find this. I don't know if we can find this. There's not always, it's hard to find the full letter of this. Hold on. Hard to find the full letter. Let's see if this is it. Nope. Nope. Yeah, and Snopes saying that this letter isn't even real now. I remember covering this years ago. Let's see if we can find it real quick, guys. Just give me 1 second. Let me show you what a federal ICE agent, if we can find it. Like I said, Google is fucked up now, so. Aha. Let's see if we can get this one. Oops. Okay, well, fuck that. It probably won't be on this one either. The thing is on this one is the finding the note. He left a note literally outlining a plan to attack Americans and shit like that. So yeah. Let's see if I cannot find it. Does anybody remember that letter? Does anybody remember that letter at all? You guys might. I've done videos on it. He talks about the U.S. that he grew up in. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Man, we got to find that fucking letter. They've scrubbed it from the internet. I've done videos on this, so let's see if we can find it this way. Is this it? No, it's too small. It was Pier 40. Right, he says the United States I grew up in, talking about they were just letting people cross the border. Was it Pier 40? Pier 40 or 41? Pier 40. We're going to try. Try to find this one more time here. We might be able to find it here. Here we go. Yeah, here we go. So this was, and see, I knew it would be in something like this, like an archive type deal. ICE agent commits suicide in New York City and leaves a note revealing the government's plans to round up and disarm Americans. 42-year-old U.S. Immigration Customs Enforcement deportation officer shot himself with a .40 caliber, and you gotta love this shit. You gotta love these fucking psyops, right? With the numerology in them, it's just crazy. 40 caliber at Pier 40, right, in Hudson River around 11 a.m. So, 4, right, is representative in numerology of it's a foundation or order. It's law enforcement, right? So there, and zeros don't count in numerology. So 4, 4, and then 11, which is 44. So it's fours. It's all fours, guys. And he's 42 years old, which it's 2 4s is what it's saying. It's just funny. And the suicide note, here is the suicide note. This is what he says. And then we're going to show you some of this other stuff. I was hired to enforce law, to capture and deport people who come to this country against our laws. But now, if I dare to do that, and they've scrubbed this bitch from the internet, by the way. Matter of fact, if you go to Snopes, they say that this letter isn't real, but I'm reading it to you right now. And this was real when it came out years ago, back in 2016 or 2017. I was hired to enforce the law, to capture and deport people who come to this country against our laws. But now, if I dare to do that, I face being suspended or fired because our president refuses to faithfully execute the duties of his office. Instead, I come to work each day and collect a paycheck twice a month for intentionally doing little to nothing. I cannot and will not be party to this fraud, to this usurpation of the law, or to this despicable politicians betraying our nation, the note continued. ICE's office, If the American people knew what the government is planning, they would rise up and overthrow it. And dude, I'm telling you, this is fucking classic psychological warfare, by the way. And I feel like when they're telling you this, by the way, all right, when they're telling you this is them saying what they're actually doing right now, right? I cannot and will not be party to this fraud, saying that this is a fraud, this usurpation of the law. They're usurping the law by doing this. Despicable politicians betraying our nation, right? Because it's politically motivated. If the American people, and it's against Obama, right? Obviously at this time, if the American people knew what the government is planning, they would rise up and overthrow it. If I or anyone else in the federal government reveal what is coming, we would be killed anyway. So now I will reveal what I know. We in federal law enforcement have been drilling for several years to control riots and uprisings from a coming financial collapse and widespread bank failures. The drill involves life-size images of American men, even women and children, whom we are told to shoot for practice and to get used to it. We have been told that the economy is terminally ill and will fail. And this is back, in 2016. So this is how old this was. And I remember covering this, guys. We are told the banks are all insolvent and the FDIC doesn't have nearly enough funds to bail out depositors. We are told these events are unavoidable, and it is imperative that the government survive when people rise up over this. When the collapse takes place, detention camps created under the FEMA Rex 84 program in the 80s to house illegal aliens whom we are going to deport. Think about what's going on. Will instead be used to imprison American citizens whom the government feels constitute a threat. American citizens will be rounded up without warrant and imprisoned without trial for God knows how long. These camps have been equipped to carry out Hitler-scale killings, an actual purge of American citizens by the very government which they themselves created and pay for. I cannot be party to this. The government knows the military will rise up to stop this, so our military is being deployed overseas, intentionally involved in foreign fights, and deliberately shrunk in size so they cannot be here or help Americans. This is why certain ammunition and weaponry has been removed from state-level National Guard armories. Over 1 billion rounds of hollow point ammunition has been bought by federal government. The state themselves have been disarmed of military-grade firepower so they cannot defend themselves from the federal activities. This is also why local police departments have been militarized and provided with armored vehicles and weapons of war, the note says. When the inevitable collapse begins to take place, electric power to the entire country will be shut off, as will all forms of communication. All banks will be immediately closed, and no one will be able to get any money because all ATMs will be offline. Credit, debit, and EBT cards will not function. Anyone without cash will have no way to get any. The emergency alert system will be used to take over all broadcast stations and tell the public this is a result of a cyber attack. And you guys remember October of what was it? What year was that? 2017? Trump and his presidential emergency alert that he created. You guys remember that? It's you start to really look at what's happened, the hardening of the grid and all this shit. You start to really look what's happened, man. I'm fucking telling you. It looks like this has been set up for quite a long time, and this might be, and remember, Trump being known as the last president. But the emergency alert system will be used to take over all broadcast stations and tell the public it's a result of a cyber attack. But while the American people patiently await things to get back to normal, the government will unleash roundup of citizens they deem militant or dangerous. With all civilian communications out, all TV and radio stations taken over by the emergency alert system, by the time word spreads of what's taking place, the government will already have the upper hand. Every federal prison has been outfitted with lethal gas systems. When things go bad, all prisoners in all prisons will be placed in their cells on lockdown. Prison staff will depart the facility, and a certain designated person will trigger a lethal gas system. All federal prisoners, regardless of their crime or their sentence, will be gassed to death in their cells. Once the gas clears, the dead will be removed, and the prisons will then be used to house citizens who fight against the federal onslaught. So the intent of the government to succeed, have they recruited priests, rabbis, and clerics from various religions to quote appropriate scriptures about obeying government. They are being trained to tell people not to fight back, and their best hope is to pray. It goes on to great lengths about Executive Order 13603. Yeah, this don't even have the whole fucking note in here. But here we go. It does have it, I guess. The rest of it's down here. So, which Executive Order 13603 is National Defense Resource Preparedness. It's a 10-page document blueprint of federal takeover of the economy, which the government, and they say it's Obama's plan. It's not Obama's plan. It's the government's plan of seizing control. All commodities and products that are capable of being ingested by either human beings or animals, all forms of energy, all forms of civil transportation, all usable water from all sources, health resources, drugs, biological products, medical devices, materials, facilities, health supplies, services, and equipment, forced labor or induction, as the executive order delicately refers to military conscription. Moreover, federal officials would issue regulations to prioritize and allocate resources. And Executive Order 13600Z says the ominous ambiguity during the full spectrum of emergencies. So it's saying all of them. The suicide note touches on the subject of preppers. It says, we in federal law enforcement have also been told that the government has a full database of so-called preppers. those who will be dealt with first by armed federal agents coming to take their guns, their food stocks, so food can be redistributed as the government sees fit. If the dead's officers' claims about unavoidable economic and banking collapse are true, would it then follow that executive order put in place by Obama might be activated? Would all of us find ourselves in forced labor while the government takes our food and redistributes it under the executive order's paragraph about allocating resources? It's terrifying stuff. It is not our intent to cause panic or alarm. While we expect readers to be intelligent enough to discern this on their own, we feel compelled to point out that these could simply be paranoid ramblings of an insane person who killed himself. On the other hand, this could also be revelations by a person who was so distraught over the ugly truth that he killed himself. And the website on Snopes has issued a declaration that our story is a hoax and that it's somehow not a radio station and attributed the story, and that the website, the former FBI National Security Intelligence asset named Hal Turner, whom she means as a white supremacist. Wow. Wow. Yeah, and I told you, Snopes definitely said it was fucking a hoax and all of this. And see, this is the National Defense Resource Preparedness right here, so you can see what this is actually about, guys. Every bit of this is true, which we can go through some of this if you guys want. Well, we'll show you. You know. OCR, which is optical character recognition. These are technologies, and it's a technology used to automated data to extract quickly and convert images of text into machine readable format. They're just doing everything. You see where technology has taken all of this, right? They could literally have you on your ass in a moment, dude. In a moment's time, and you see where they're taking all of this. We have World Population Plan of Action. I'm going to start dropping some of these things in the chat for you guys. That way, if I don't hit them, you can still. That way, you can still get to these and have these for yourself. Who wrote it? Who wrote what? Who wrote what? Who wrote it, John? Who wrote what? The article, or who wrote the executive order 13603? Obama wrote that executive order, but it's not just his executive order, though, right? It's been, since Biden still had it. Just like Trump did the Reauthorization Act of 2020, that was Bush's original Patriot Act, but Trump picked up on it. So, like, it's still in effect. And who wrote the original article, I'm not sure. But that article has been all over the place. I'm just saying that was a news story back in 2015 or 2016 or some shit like that, if you guys remember. So, matter of fact. And, you can see here. Hold on.
Over the city, looking down on Washington, D.C., you'll see there are two main boulevards culminating in a pyramid. And just at the very top of the pyramid is a street cutting it off. And then within the triangle at the top, where the eye on the dollar bill is the Capitol. And the Capitol building sits there. It's a pyramid. Then it has the Cleopatra's Needle, which is a Washington monument. And the river, the long riverway and the long water is called the River Styx, which is where Pharaoh went into heaven on the River Styx. It is all laid out in Masonic symbolism, and the five-pointed star, which is a pentagram, has always been used. Satan worship, satanic worship, the five-pointed pentagram. And if you take the arms off of a pentagram, you have a pentagon. And the United States Pentagon is sitting exactly due north, aiming due north at the North Star Thuban, which is drawing power, according to the ancient Egyptians, for the god of war.
Just take a road map of Washington, D.C. Just take a look at it from the air, and you'll see what appears to be the goat of Mendez. And the goat of Mendez,
which is a symbol in Freemasonry.
Right.
It's a symbol. It's a demonic symbol within the
you see the
Freemasonic
goat
order.
and the horns and the whole thing. The whole city is laid out like that.
Yep.
It's all over.
So what we're basically saying here is that there is nothing happening by chance.
Right. Nothing's happening by chance. You know, people don't think that they believe this shit, but they do. You know, they believe this shit. And just to kind of give you an idea, too, let's see here. Get to this one.
There are 4 aerospace covert facilities. This is what we call the aerospace connection in the Antelope Valley and also the San Joaquin Valley. Rockwell in the San Joaquin, Lockheed, McDonnell Douglas, and Northrop in the Antelope.
So and here, before I do this one, hold on. They have all of these executive orders in place for when and you can see, like, they're already talking about, are they getting ready for, and we'll go to that other article here. They are getting, and this is the scenario number 1 in the United States, is what is called the federal government's plan response to small nuclear attack, right? And they have framework and everything set up for that. These are all the different scenarios, right? Now, remember, when we were talking about what was just happening, what would happen in the Bush era, and what they talked about, they would focus on taking over and shutting down communications. This is pre-Obama. Suggests the government deployed and revised such an order in light of the explosive growth in the 90s of the consumer internet, underscoring how little lawmakers can infer. Another file from the summer of 2008 mentioned that Justice Department lawyers were revising an unidentified draft order in light of a recent Supreme Court opinion. The memo does not specify the ruling, but the court had just issued landmark decisions on topics that could relate to government actions in an emergency. And guess what happened? Executive Order 13603. The bottom line is that these documents have no doubt post 9/11 emergency action documents have significant implications for Americans' civil liberties, right? And there were 48 directives when the Bush administration took office. The number had grown to 56. And all these orders have no consultation with Congress. And it seems prudent as the government reoriented to focus on national security after 9/11 and gather materials about the Presidential Emergency Actions Documented Files and Freedom of Information Act. Significant curbs on executive power after the Trump years, including a provision that would require disclosure of the emergency action documents to congressional power. The bill, called the Protecting Our Democracy Act, is not expected to pass the Senate, where Republicans can block it with a filibuster, but advocates of imposing some new limits on presidential emergency powers with some bipartisan support are discussing trying later this year to attach a portion to an annual defense authorization act that is considered a must pass. And see, this is how the fuck they do it. They add, a piece that everybody wants, like, oh, we'll protect them from presidential power, to a must-pass Defense Authorization Act. It's our duty as lawmakers to demand that the executive branch turn over documents so Congress, representatives, etc., presidents attempt to exploit emergencies, assume extraordinary powers. They proposed a bill after President Donald J. Trump claimed he wielded total authority in the early days of the coronavirus. And the broad-scale criticism, Japanese relocation programs, well-known, well-founded, right? See, so all of these things, this is actually a good article if you guys want to get this. This is out of New York Times. And this just leads you to a billion different documents that you can see. But I'm just showing you, this has been going all the way back for a long fucking time. He was talking about the note. I don't remember who the first person was that actually published that note, but I know it was he was a federal ICE agent that was 42 years old on Pier 40 in New York, and he shot himself with a .40 caliber, right? And he, that's what I know about that. So that's what I know about that one. And I was actually doing podcasting when that happened, when that came out. So that's how I remember that. So Now, think about Trump talking about the absolute power and all of this. They say he's trying to plan for a third term. We'll see. Got a few different things I want to show you here. Here we go.
Could a resolution to amend the U.S. Constitution allow President Trump and other future presidents a third term in office? Interesting question. During a rally in Las Vegas today, Trump jokingly mentioned serving a third term. This comes just days after a House Republican is seeking to pave the way for the president to do just that.
I didn't make any stops along the way. It will be the greatest honor of my life to serve not once, but twice or 3 times or 4 times. Headlines for the fake news. Now it will be to serve twice. For the next 4 years, I will not rest. I will not yield. And together we will not fail. We will win, win, win. We will bring back the American dream. We're going to bring it back. It will be the greatest honor of my life to serve not once, but twice or 3 times or 4 times.
Yeah. And bringing back that American dream. If it's anything they've been dreaming of for the last fucking few decades, I don't want no part of that motherfucking dream. You know what I'm saying? For real. And just to kind of, let you see, they have plans in place.
The World Economic Forum, in conspiracy with Bill Gates, has devised a plan to sabotage RFK Jr.'s nomination as health secretary. Why? Because RFK Jr. threatens their ultimate goal, ensuring everyone is subjected to mandatory mRNA vaccinations every 6 months. No exceptions, no escape. But it doesn't stop there. Vaccine hesitancy is being weaponized against us, tied to social credit score systems designed to strip away our freedoms. Non-compliance? That'll make you a second-class citizen, unable to work, shop, or even access basic services. This is the dystopian future we've been warning about. And the elite? They're so desperate to push this agenda through, they're not even bothering to hide it anymore. Before we dive in, join the People's Voice Locals community if you haven't already, and sign up to become a member of the world's first where the new digital wallet app only allows people with a 550 or higher social credit score to recharge their electric cars.
先充电后付款服务，大家一起来看看怎么样操作吧。在好充所有的站点都可以看到这个先充后付的这个小标示哦。首先我们先拔枪吧。
Are you ready for this to become your reality in the US and Europe? Obey your governments, roll up your sleeve for those mRNA injections, or face being locked out of work, travel, and basic freedoms. And once it starts, the death spiral of control and compliance begins. This isn't some far-fetched conspiracy theory, it's the future the elites are quietly rolling out right in front of our eyes. Just this week, the World Economic Forum unveiled their latest chilling plan, long-acting injectable mRNA vaccines that they want everybody to take every 6 months. That's right, every 6.
Yeah, and here's the thing. The whole social credit scoring system, we just covered this the other day, the cryptocurrency system using body activity data. That's the social credit scoring system shit they're talking about right there, dude. All of this shit's already in the works. And you can tell the elite, and they know people are going to fight back. They know people are going to, they're going to go off over this shit. So they're getting ready.
Why were members of the Senate given satellite phones for emergency communication? Less than a year ago, members of Congress were given emergency satellite phones. Satellite communication was being deployed to ensure a redundant and secure means of communication during a disruptive event. The phones were a security backstop in the case of an emergency that takes out communications in America. We, the people, are funding their satellite phones. So, where's ours? Bill and Melinda Gates' foundation have been selling shares of Microsoft. Jamie Dimon just sold $150 million of JP Morgan for the first time since 2005. Mark Zuckerberg sold more than $400 million of Meta, and Jeff Bezos recently sold $8.5 billion of Amazon stock. Elites are dumping stocks, selling their homes, and building underground bunkers. Are you paying attention?
Well, mine's a little dark. I just feel a lot of concern that 2024 may be the year of a black swan event. This is a national security event with high impact that's very hard to predict. There are a number of concerns that I have that factor into that. And we're
You see how she winked when she said that?
so divided in this country in ways that we haven't seen before. And I think that just creates fertile ground for our adversaries.
That was Emmy-winning and Emmy-nominated senior investigative correspondent Catherine Herridge. BlackRock, the headquarters of CBS, fired Catherine suddenly last week. CBS officials took the unusual step of seizing her files, computers, and records, including information on privileged sources. What exactly were they looking for? On whose behalf were they searching? Serious question. Why are a bunch of billionaires, millionaires, celebrities, and elites suddenly building huge underground doomsday bunkers?
Okay, so where the hell are we going? We are going to go to a bunker that we might very necessarily need.
As The Guardian reported, the latest billionaire trend? Doomsday bunkers with a flammable moat. Is all this bunker building a sign the 1% know something we don't and are preparing for end times? A famous quote in tech circles is often attributed to William Gibson. The future is here, it's just not evenly distributed. That's true of disaster as well. Podcaster Christina Randall said, Zuckerberg's reported bunker is one of approximately 15 end-of-days projects being undertaken by billionaires worldwide, and said the biblical book of Revelation, which predicts the end of the world, is being fulfilled.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, they're all getting ready, and you can see too, this is the thing with the government as well. Oh, hold up, not this one, this one.
There are 4 aerospace covert facilities. This is what we call the aerospace connection in the Antelope Valley and also the San Joaquin Valley. Rockwell in the San Joaquin, Lockheed, McDonnell Douglas, and Northrop in the Antelope Valleys. And these operations are extremely suspicious. They have a surface cover activity. They call themselves RCS testing sites. That stands for radar cross-section. And apparently their presumed purpose is to test various aeroform designs atop pylons with radar cross-section. And the disturbing part is that we have found out with incontrovertible proof that there are extensive underground facilities. And for example, Northrop, we have documented to have 42 levels underground. Now, if this is radar cross-section testing, which is above ground, why do they need 42 levels underground? Also, at the Lockheed facility out in Helendale, we had an investigative reporter who saw a blueprint of the building plans for that facility that he wasn't supposed to see. It showed that they had an extensive underground facility 300 feet down. And when this reporter interviewed the person who was in charge of that facility, they had a nice, pleasant interview until at the end, he told the director that he was aware of this extensive underground facility. And what could he tell him about that? And immediately, the man's eyes grew wide, and he said, this interview is terminated. So it's very suspicious. And then, of course, we have other reports of people in the area who say that they have seen alien craft emanating from these facilities and terminating at these facilities, and other kinds of blue beams, strange lights in the sky, surveillance orbs, size of basketballs, medicine balls that survey the area and move in ways that we don't possess that kind of technology. In terms of the Northrop facility, which is also known as the Anthill, the construction, the underground facility was greatly enlarged in the early 80s. And what took place there was an enlargement, I understand, from 13 levels underground to 42 levels underground. And we have reports from construction workers who actually worked on the site, cement truck drivers. And at one point, Michael, cement trucks suddenly appeared on the scene 5 miles long, pouring concrete continuously, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for weeks. And we figure at 9 yards of concrete per truck, close to 1 million yards of concrete must have been poured underground. Also, we understand from the construction workers that 3 silos were constructed there, 3 underground silos. And we were bringing out the fact that saucers have been seen to just come screaming out of the facility as if they had some travel distance underground. And also craft like helicopters would come into the facility and just disappear into the ground. So we knew from construction reports and from visual reports outside the facility that something very suspicious in the way of silence.
Yeah, and I want to show you too. Yeah, look at these motherfuckers, y'all. And I'll show you some of the. You can see there's tunnels and tunnels and tunnels. There you go. And I'm going to turn that music down that way I don't get hit for copyright. But yeah, I mean, you'll see, like, and this is the thing, like, we know that there are underground tunnel networks all the way across the United States. Their advanced weaponry and things, they're calling them flying saucers and alien technology. We have no fucking idea if it is or it isn't, honestly, if you think about it. I've done many videos, in the past that, it would appear as if humanity, that's a whole nother video for a whole nother day. Oh shit. Whole nother video for a whole nother day. And we we have seen, many things that kind of would lead us to believe that that there are other entities involved in humanity's creation and even the destruction of the earth, several times, right? And that maybe they're still here today, and maybe that's what's behind a lot of the governments and things like that. We do know that there's a spiritual connotation to all of this as well, but that's neither here nor there. We're not even going to get into all of that right now. Just leaving the facts being the facts of, we know the plans are in place. We know they've got everything legally set up to be able to seize power, seize control. There's agendas every aspect of the world, and it appears as if they're preparing for something. And I guess the question is what? The question is what? When? How? It's been a slow, meticulous burn, but where we've been weakened to such a point to where it's like, Could humanity even withstand, any of these disasters, whether they're artificial, they're triggered, created, or natural, given what's been done to us, given how weak we've been made by all of the other agendas. So I think I'm gonna wrap this one up here. I'm just tired. I've been going on for forever. Yeah. Familiar with the work of the Dival? Yes, I am familiar with that. I did not know he died, though. I did not know that at all. I did not know that George Divold or whatever. Yeah, he talked about, I think it was 2038 or 2040, like a recurring micronova solar flash type event. He got a lot of traction. I do know you're talking about. I don't know. I didn't know he died. I did not know that. Honestly, I didn't know that. That's crazy. Very crazy, actually. I do want to. Like I said, I am going to wrap this one up here. So I want to thank you guys for joining me. Please make sure to hit the thumbs up, guys. Give this video a like, whether you're watching this live or you catch us on the flip side. And share this link. Share it to your social media. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of that. You're more than welcome to reuse it on your YouTube channels, all that stuff, guys. I don't mind it at all. And consider donating, supporting. That is how I'm able to do what I do. It helps me out so much. Sorry, guys, I'm getting tired here. It's what helps me out, allows me to do what I do. And I do appreciate everybody who financially supports, who shares the content, comments, all that. If you want to donate, it's paypal.me, the Best Damn Podcast, Cash App, Best Damn Podcast, or Facebook Messenger Pay, facebook.com, John Keane, Best Damn Podcast, or patreon.com, Best Damn Podcast Official. Like I said, it's greatly appreciated. And make sure to subscribe to all that. We got 3 different YouTube accounts. I just got my an account back, so make sure to go subscribe. It's youtube.com, John Keane, JONKEEN 33. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subs so I can monetize that channel. So help me out. I'm at 715 or something like that over on that one. And then I have the backup channel, which is Best Damn Podcast 2. It's youtube.com, Best Damn Podcast. The main YouTube channel, youtube.com, Best Damn Podcast Official. And then follow me, Instagram, Best Damn Podcast, Facebook, Best Damn Podcast, Twitter, The Real Best Damn, and TikTok, The Best Damn Podcast. And I'm posting new stuff daily on all of the main platforms. I'm over on BitChute, DLive, Twitch, everywhere, really. Odyssey, everywhere. So you can find me anywhere, but the main platforms I'm posting daily. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and donate to support the channel. I love you guys, and I will see you next time. Make sure to check out the last few videos we did too. There were some really good ones. So been doing a lot of good work lately. So I love you guys. I'll see you next time. Peace.